Welcome back to another episode of Backlog Crew. We are collectively known as Press A to Talk. My name is Ryder, and I will be hosting this part two of Mass Effect, which is really only going to be the last 4 hours of a 30 to 40 hour game. So, part two, narratively, is what matters. Like I said, my name is Ryder, and I'm joined here today with John and Kurt.
Hey.
And before we get started, I'm just going to give a quick rehash of kind of where we're at narratively for our sake, as well as for the viewer's sake, just so you know kind of what's happened up until this point. Like I said, we will be going through the end of the game in this video. Uh, so really, up until this point in the game, we know that Shepard has proven Saren's involvement with the Geth. We know that Saren is trying to find a ancient Prothean technology called the Conduit, and we've tracked down Saren to the planet Vermeer, where we end up finding out that he's actually breeding an army of Krogan. Big scariness for the council races, the rest of the galaxy. Uh, but the interesting part of this is that Saren has somehow found a cure to the genophage. This ultimately culminates with a confrontation with Rex, a Krogan himself, and for the three of us, we each decided individually to talk Rex down, each of us through different methods. And he decided to trust Shepard and just go along with his decision to destroy the facility because it would ultimately be best for the galaxy. Here on Vermeer, we find another Prothean beacon and learn a bit more about the Protheans through that, and actually have our first conversation with a Reaper Sovereign. Sovereign was previously believed to be a ship, Saren ship, maybe a Reaper ship, repurposed. But through this conversation, we do find out that it is a sentient, synthetic alien ship hybrid. We end up having this really dramatic knockdown fight between the remaining Geth and have to make a choice between Ashley or Caden, who we're going to rescue. We all chose to save Caden, and I'll leave it at that. The facility is destroyed because of Ashley's sacrifice, and we all kind of skedaddle out of there and are allowed a very brief moment to mourn Ashley. That's pretty much where we're up to at this point. Picking up from where we left off, we receive a message from the Citadel. The council has requested our presence for a briefing, something, what another. We need to go check out, see what it is. So we go talk to the
But
council.
before
You go
we
ahead.
get
Go
to
ahead.
that, before we get to that, so last time I stopped right as soon as we got back to the ship on
Oh yeah,
from
yeah.
Vermeer. So I didn't like talk to anybody. I didn't do the morning thing. So I wanted to talk about one thing from that real quick. I went and talked to Caden because I figured that would be like the heaviest conversation because he's like, we picked Caden instead of Ashley, and if we had picked, if we hadn't saved his life, we could have saved hers. And I'm talking to him, and he's like, I've never lost someone in my command before. How do you move past that? And there was an option. I basically wanted to say, it's okay to mourn, but right now we need to like focus on the mission so that like we have a chance to mourn like at all like later. And it was like the neutral option. I usually try to choose like the Paragon, the nice options. But I choose like the neutral one because it sounds the most like what I want to say. But then he's like, "You need to get over it right now and focus on the mission at hand." And I'm just like, "What is happening? No, that's not what I wanted at all." And I just thought, so I like reloaded the save, and I was like, "Nope, that's not what I said to Caden after this." And so I said the nice thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That was just another example, like I talked about last time, of every once in a while he's just like hyper aggressive, just out of nowhere in the middle of a conversation.
Which it kind of again brings us back to the point where we talked about in the last episode that for better or worse, this dialogue system has its issues.
Mm-hmm.
As being one of them, where sometimes it seems like the most rational option or the option that seems best for your play style, and then it comes just kind of out of left field. And maybe it's not even aggressive, but it's just like that wasn't what I intended to say. And since Kurt actually recommended it, I've been playing through. I played through the end of Mass Effect One, and I started at the beginning of Mass Effect Two, and I've been playing with the technique, I guess, of reading the line to myself as the beginning of the sentence or the beginning of this line of dialogue, and then whatever follows afterwards. Just it seems more natural. It fits with
Hmm.
most things, so I think that's a great way to do it. Um, but I guess so. We'll stick with this just for a sec. Uh, did everyone kind of talk to everyone else on the ship? I know that and for my playthrough, like I said, I had saved maybe 10 Solarians, something like that, from the SCG unit. Commander Kirahi was there, as well as the requisitions officer that's with him.
Yeah, and he was funny because you talked to him and he's like, "Thank you so much for saving us, Commander Shepard. You're a hero." And then your only option is goodbye or show me your wares, and I just think
Yeah,
that's really funny.
yeah, I thought so too. I was like, man, okay, seems like he kind of dropped the ball with dialogue. I'm trying to excuse it as much as possible. We'll get to that later. But just briefly on this topic right now, I went and talked to everyone, and I don't think there was more than a minute and a half of dialogue total on
Hmm.
Ashley's death. And briefly, you have everyone in the comm chamber, your debriefing room, whatever you want to call it, and you're talking to everyone. And Caden is very, very briefly like, "Man, really sucks that Ashley's dead." And then you're like, "All right, let's move on from that."
Hmm.
Okay, I guess like we're trying to keep our eyes on the prize here, but then as soon as you leave, like you said, Kurt, Caden seems like the person to have the most, and there's very little there,
Yeah,
and pretty much everyone's like, yeah, well, I hate that you had to make that decision, but I'm going to stick by that decision, is what they say, and it's like, okay, hmm,
I think I think I know why.
why is that?
They remember all the missions they went on with Ashley.
oh my gosh.
Maybe that's what it
They
was.
are
They're just
the
being polite.
they are
It
all non-humans, and everyone that has played this game can understand how Ashley reacts to non-humans. So they may be sympathetic to this fact, but ultimately, that this is just somebody that was constantly insulting them. So
it is still weird narratively though, like even with the humans, like Shepard specifically, and this could be because I like pursued the route that was anti-romance with Ashley. So maybe Shepard didn't you know, care about her as much as he might have otherwise. But whenever Caden's like, "Why did you save me?" He's Shepard's basically just, I had to make a decision and I decided to save you because I thought that was the right thing to do. And it's like, okay, but like show a little bit of grief or like remorse or like it was a hard decision and like honestly, like here's I don't know. I guess it's up to us as a players to decide why we made the decision, and it would be too in depth even for a narrative system like this for the game to understand like all the different reasons you might make the decision and have Shepard explain that. But it felt like it was like a big moment when you had to lose a character the first time like well potentially the first time you've lost a party member, and then all of a sudden it's just like all right, let's move on, let's go to the finale now. I don't know, it was all right, it just felt unceremonious.
I agree. Um, I think that's something that just not like death in particular, but just handling specific moments is something that this game struggled with a couple of times. Again, I don't want to go too deep. I think the rest of the series does this a lot better, but you can kind of feel at some points that maybe lack of budget or just it's really the first game to try and do something like this narratively, that I can think of. There's other games again like Knights of the Old Republic that you definitely feel the influence there, but just didn't go maybe as deep with these lasting decisions,
Yeah, didn't the first
specifically on the
Witcher come
party.
out this year as well? Same
Yeah, so
2007.
came out the same year, and
It's
that's
interesting.
also a game that kind of started this trend of consequences are meaningful. But moving on from here, though, uh, like I said, the council is calling us back to the Citadel. Um, we go back to the Citadel at this point and have a meeting with them where they essentially thank us for uncovering Saren's complicity in this plot and for destroying the breeding facility. And they're like, yeah, no, we believe you. The Geth and Saren are definitely a risk to the galaxy. So we're going to place blockades near every mass relay. Um, And that initially is like, okay, that's a good thing, I guess. But the other part of this is that Saren doesn't really care about any of the other mass relays. He's going through the Mu mass relay,
Mm.
which is actually outside of the Citadel's jurisdiction. Uh, so his path is essentially completely unprotected. He can just walk right in. I'm not sure if you guys brought this up or not. My shepherd did bring this up, like, okay, cool, thanks. You're, little too little, little too late. Um, but you got the spirit. Now we also need to like block the Mew relay, and
Mm.
they were like, no, we can't do that because yeah, the reasoning does make sense. But essentially they say that, as far as I can recall, that the Mew relay is it in the terminus systems, which is more or less the Wild West, and if they send a fleet in that area, that will potentially result in all that war with the terminus systems. Um, the reasoning makes sense, but again, when you're looking at someone that's at this level of galactic threat, from my perspective, it's getting really hard to reason with them because your shepherd's like laying down like this is going to happen, it happens. This is going to happen, it happens. This is going to happen, and they're collectively stonewalling you every time. And this really culminates with the biggest frustration, in my opinion, is that Udina tells you that they are actually grounding your ship and that he's the one who actually made this decision. So he's preventing Shepard, who is a Spectre, whose whole goal is to do the things that are illegal, under the table or whatever. He's going to prevent Shepard from actually going and seeking out Saren himself, which is really the biggest slap in the face. I'll let
Yeah,
either one of you talk about what happened for you. If one of you, Kurt, did you have pretty much the
yeah, it was
same
pretty much
experience?
the same like series of events, and whenever Udina was you know, betraying us for all intents and purposes, I tried to choose all the options that would like get me to punch him because I really wanted to punch him, and he never did. I chose one that was like really angry, and I was like, "Ooh, that sounds like it's gonna like really get him." And then Shepard's like, "Nobody stabs me in the back, Udina. Nobody." And I'm like, "All right, Shepard, no, you tried. Let's get out of here now."
Like you just made yourself look worse.
Yeah, it just
Like,
made him
you
look
didn't do
really
any
dumb.
favors. Yeah.
Just looked at him. And we're like, like, it was not intimidating at all.
How about you, John? Did you have pretty much similar thing happen, or did you go a different route with this?
Yeah, it was basically the same. And doesn't at some point the council basically tell you, well, that's why we have you, is to deal with stuff like this? Like, we don't need to send a whole troop. That's what we have you for. You're a
Yeah, that
spectator.
happens earlier in the game, I
Yeah.
think.
Okay,
They
but
tell you every time up until this, and then they're
yeah,
like,
but
"We're not."
I felt it in the background of my mind as they were saying these conversations. Like, I felt like they were basically saying the same thing though. Like, well, this is your problem, really. That's why you're here. Good luck though.
It's very frustrating, like as the player, and like more frustrating as like an adult. I mean, as a teenager rather, because I remember playing this game as a teenager, and I remember largely playing as a Paragon character, but you know, as a teenager, a lot of this resonated with me. Like, not like, oh, no one trusts me, but it's, you tell someone, this is what's happening, this is what's going to happen, this is what I know, and, you're not taken seriously. And so as a
Hmm.
teenager, this like resonated with me, and I was like, no, I'm telling the truth, come on. And, there's actually a moment earlier in the game, I was Larkin about this. It's really funny. Um, there's a reporter, Altrasani something something. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
she
how
like
did that?
ambushes you.
Yeah, how did that interaction end for you guys? Either one of you can take this.
John, go ahead.
Okay, well, I try the nice route of options, and she starts twisting my words and asking me more questions to manipulate what's going on, and then she basically starts bringing up topics that obviously he would not be allowed to talk about, and so I have him straight up tell her, like, these are things that are happening right now. He said, I can't tell you the specifics of this, and she starts getting angry and going along the lines of, so why are you keeping all of this from the public? What are you hiding? And all this kind of goes on that route where she's trying to make him look like a bad person when literally all he's trying to do is, save the galaxy. So, along those
I
lines.
I chose like all the diplomatic answers. I don't think she got mad. She definitely got like like predatorial, I guess. Like kept pushing the issue to try to make you say something bad. But I think it went fine, even though it felt kind of like scummy to twist words a little bit. But then I got a call from, is it Harkin that's in charge of the Fifth Fleet?
Hackett.
Hackett. Got a call from Hackett, and he's like, just saw the interview. You did a good job. She's like a sleazy reporter for trying to like get you caught in a trap like that. So, I don't know. It went fine.
Okay, so that's pretty much how mine went as well. Pretty close to Kurtz's, I guess. Um, I pretty much made her look stupid by talking circles around her.
Hmm.
Um, and it's crazy because I was fully expecting to see this happen and do this, but when I was playing this as a teenager, just going back to this, like it's crazy how your views change and how you respond to things change as you get older. Not just like these moral dilemmas, but something as simple as talking to someone and them not believing you or trying to twist your words. But I was
Hmm.
talking to the reporter as like a 15-year-old and trying to explain, and she was just kind of twisting words, twisting words. I remember getting frustrated. At this point, I was like really immersed in this, feeling like Shepard, and I was like, no one's believing me. This is so stupid. I'm so angry, and just pent up like
I'm gonna tell
testosterone
her
and
about it.
whatever else. Well, I was like, you know, trying to tell her what's what, and she's like, oh, so this is trying to like manipulate. And
Hmm.
if you give into it enough and get angry with her, there's an option to knock her lights out. And I did it. And you literally like I think you break her jaw, like hospitalize her if you
That's,
if you do it.
oh my goodness.
And I did it as like a 15-year-old. And it was like no remorse, like like you deserve that. And it's so crazy because that option didn't even pop up this time. And I'm just kind of going off on a tangent now about the council, but it's just, it's funny how like this game can really immerse you and make you feel like those frustrations, whether it be with the reporter or the council, trying to explain your perspective and it just not being heard.
Hmm.
Um, and someone like Odina, who was supposed to be on humanity's side, supposed to take your side as a fellow human, and also just understanding that you are telling the truth. You're working for the advance of humanity. From his perspective, he's trying to protect humanity's interest, I guess. But it's again just frustrating after everything we've seen up until this point proving true. Uh, Moving on from this point, though, we end up getting sent back to the Normandy, and on the Normandy, we are greeted by a person. I was greeted by Liara. My shepherd was kind of slumped against the wall, very clearly upset. Were either of you greeted by a character?
Well, at this point, we know that the ship's been grounded and we
Hmm.
can't leave.
Hmm.
My shepherd was by himself, and then Joker came over the intercom. And he's like, "Hey, Commander, you there?" And then the options were like, "Are you spying on me?" or "Yes, I'm here." I don't remember which one I picked, but then he tells you, I assume what you're going for is like that Captain Anderson wants to meet with us at Flux, which is like the club in no, you're shaking your head a little bit.
How about you, John? What do you have?
Okay, well, for one, I don't. Liara, is that like the Asari, your companion? Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get into why I was mixing the names up, but there was a reason. Yeah, I didn't really have much to do with her, so yeah, she naturally didn't come up. No, it was just Joker.
Interesting. Okay.
What did you do differently? Did you hang out with Liara a bunch?
Yeah.
I talked to her after. Did you pursue her as your love interest? Is that the
Hmm.
difference? Oh,
I
I
did.
see.
So
Well,
I
that
was
makes
just
perfect
interested
sense.
to
Yeah.
see if it was going to default to something or if there was a chance that you could be single
I
in
was
this game.
Nah, I'm a
I was
hallucination to her.
I was kind of hoping Joker contacted me because I was just like really nice to Joker, but I guess Joker's the default.
Yeah. So I didn't know that you could have that option.
Yeah,
Um,
finish the game single.
Speaking of Joker, did y'all ever get the backstory on him?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, I was just
Um,
curious because we
and
You
didn't bring
can
it up in
touch
the
on that,
last
this
John, if
video.
you want to.
Well, I just randomly talked to the entire crew right when we became a Spectre in the you know, back in the past here. But we began talking to Joker, and he's asking about his crew members because he wants to know who's on his crew. And then Joker's like, "Oh, so you did a background check on me?" And he's like, "Well, my condition is not going to affect my job." And then you're just like, "Okay, great. What condition?" And he's like,
yeah,
"Oh." So he just assumed he was about to start being rude to him or even try to move him away from this position just because, if I'm not mistaken, he has
it's
muscular dystrophy or something. Is that the correct name?
it's I don't know if this is the correct name,
No,
but it's like brittle bone disease.
it's
Yes.
a Vrolic syndrome.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
his bones break really easy. However, that does not stop him from making it through all the trainings of the Alliance and becomes one of the best pilots. Probably could even be the best pilot of the Alliance, and that's why he's
Hmm.
put on the most advanced ship the Alliance has, which is the Normandy. So that was the backstory you can
Yeah.
get from Joker. Hmm?
It's really cool, and it's crazy that that's like totally just completely optional. Because one, it just is a really interesting story, and it's an important character that you could theoretically know nothing about if you choose to. And this is jumping way too far ahead, but I started Mass Effect 2, and there's like a scene near the beginning where it's relevant that he has that disease. But if you hadn't have talked to him in Mass Effect 1 and like known that he has it, then it would just basically you're in a rush and you're trying to get him to move, and he's like, hey, be careful with me, but it's like, no dude, you need to go. But if you didn't know that he has this disease, you would just have a completely different perspective on like his dialogue at that moment. I just think that's really interesting, that even like small optional conversations kind of carry a narrative weight moving forward.
So that's really, this entire game works like that. And it's really interesting because, it's long or short as you want it to be. And, the pretty much all of the conversations with your team members, your squad members, and just, the crew in general, completely optional. You don't have to uh, grow any relationship between any of them, not just in a romantic way, but you don't have to become friends with them. You just keep them as squad mates. And of course, you'll end up with different events happening because of that. Um, you might end up with Rex being killed on Vermeer. You might
Yep.
not, like I said, have a romance option. Like I didn't even know that was possible. I thought the game might default to someone. Um, really, really cool stuff with that. So as far as like I said, on my game, I actually ended up romancing Liara, and I talked briefly about there being controversy surrounding these games in the last episode, and that's actually part of it. Is up until this game, there never been a romance option in a game like this. Like you
Mhm.
might have maybe a shortcut scene like a significant other, but not like a relationship that you could like cultivate. Um, but yeah, so Fox News ran a story back when the game released, essentially saying, this game had like pornographic material in it. Up until this point, I can't really think of any other games really had um, a sex scene, whether it be optional or not. This is optional in this game, but it was a big enough deal for Fox News to make mention of it. Which you could argue that maybe it was just to generate controversy for views, whatever it may be. But it caught some traction, and people picked up on it, and it kind of generated negative attention in general for the game. And for video games, all publicity is good publicity is something that's said, but I don't know if that really holds true for video games because the video games have typically had a bad rep for a while, and 2007 is far enough away from inherently negative events like Columbine, where video games were used as justification for in the media's light for what happened. But having a sex scene optional or not, graphic or not, was something that was used as a negative talking point for not just Mass Effect but for video games in general. And, some of the actual anchors that ran the story and talked about it ended up coming back later, and they're like, actually, no, I've seen worse on cable TV for PG-13 movies.
Mhm.
There's absolutely nothing shown other than the backs of the character models. Again, it's nothing worse than you would see on television, but for whatever reason, I guess it's a video game, and media wants to generate controversy, conversation, so they did. Uh,
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad now as it was around this game's release, but I mean, video games are basically, they're the new D&D, which was the new rock and roll, which was the new etc. It's just the satanic panic. It just repeats itself over and over again, and uh, people who are outside of a hobby or an entertainment want to find something to pin all the terrible things that the younger generation or just the world is doing or is that's happening in the world on something. I don't know if it's just to control it or to understand it, but yeah, video games were a victim for that for a while, so that doesn't surprise me.
I think it was just an outlet to complain about something.
I mean,
Could also be
ultimately,
as simple as that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's legislation that popped up as well, like in the '90s, to try and like prohibit the video game industry from really developing, because there was just such a almost witch hunt around it,
That worked well.
around yeah. I mean, thankfully it didn't go through, but when you have a whole bunch of 85-year-old white men who don't know, you know, they don't know anything about video games, and if someone shows you this headline and they're like, you know, video game has pornographic content in it, whether that's true or not, for someone who is just completely out of touch with the medium, more than likely what they're going to think of is children, video games for kids, kids
Mm.
play the game, kids see disgusting content. And it's made worse by the fact that like it's not just, there's not just the option for Ashley, but there's also the option for a blue tentacle girl, and of course weeaboos are cool with that. But you know, you're like, the fact that it's something not human, it's alien, just makes it like another
Makes it
layer.
more controversial, or yeah.
Um, and I want to say that um, Bimshep, a female shepherd, can also actually romance Liara. Um,
Well, Liara's like technically asexual, but
yes, and
yeah,
she is, but she has feminine attributes, and the
that's
game
true.
is pretty explicit in saying like, well, no, I'm not a female, I'm not a male either. I'm just have what you would traditionally consider to be female attributes. Liara says that. I think other Asari say that. Codex says that.
Mm,
But again, on face value,
yeah,
someone who's just shown this is going to be like, oh, well, it's promoting, same sex relationships. It's promoting like, sex for like children, like a list of other things. And, as far as just touching real quick on like the fact that like, children play video games, this is a rated M game. Well, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like it's publicized like on the front of it. I don't know. It's just kind of funny that like it's a complaining point anyway. Like it shouldn't be up to the gaming industry to like relegate what your children are consuming. It should be the parent's job, if you don't want your children to see this, to not let them play it.
Yeah, this kind of
yeah.
reminds me of
So
Deadpool 2, where everyone was complaining. They kept saying this is a family movie.
it's most obviously not. Like if you
Oh,
do any like minimal like research, you'd be able to find out like I am or am not okay with my children seeing this.
yeah, not to go like too much into the weeds with like video game history stuff, but like you were talking about they were trying to pass legislation in like the 90s to sort of censor video games kind of.
Mhm.
Well, that's why the ESRB exists, which is the video game rating board, and it's industry run. So the industry holds itself accountable so that the government isn't able or isn't forced to, you know what I mean? And so you're talking about like the ratings, like, there was that controversy where all games were just games, whether or not it was Mortal Kombat or if it was Mario. And at that time, games were marketed towards kids. Well, now Mortal Kombat's rated M, and kids aren't allowed to buy it. They're not supposed to play it. And if you let them play it, well, that's on you as a guardian rather than on the video game at large. So yeah, it's just it's just interesting.
Mhm. And like I said, with this, the controversy. I'm not going to say it didn't go anywhere, but like I said, some of the talking heads ended up kind of backing out. Like, actually, that was maybe a little too sensationalist. Maybe I wasn't right with that, which is great for. There's like two different reporters that did it. Forgive me, I'm not going to go look it up right now. Didn't do my research properly. But I did read their interviews, and they were actually like, "No, I'm sorry, that wasn't correct," and I respect them for doing that. Um, Ultimately, as we know, it didn't really hurt the game's uh, reputation too much because,
Mhm.
again, we are getting a fifth game within the next year or two, probably. So
That's
I'm not going to say it
very
helped either.
generous thinking.
Maybe, maybe. I'm thinking, real quick aside, we received E3 information 2015 regarding Mass Effect Andromeda. 2017, we had a game. And
Yeah,
December 2020, we got information on potential Mass Effect 5. So I'm just maybe
maybe.
this is also going to be the core team. I'm assuming it's going to be BioWare's A team, not their C team working out of like, New Albany, Mississippi. So maybe we'll get a game soon and maybe it'll be better. Anyways, moving on. I did get the romance option, controversy around that. Cool stuff. Uh, Joker comes on the intercom at the end of my cutscene. Comes on the intercom for you guys as well, um, saying, "Hey, Captain Anderson wants us." Uh, so we go meet Captain Anderson in Flux. This is actually our last chance to uh, properly explore the Citadel. Did you guys take a chance to kind of do another lap, make sure you didn't miss anything?
I fast traveled to Flux because I'd
Gotcha.
done pretty much everything in the Citadel at that point.
How
I
about
got
you,
a,
John?
I got a soldier. No, I got a person in front of Flux that gave me a side mission.
Oh yeah,
I just
someone tried
talked
to
to
give
him.
me a side mission. Sorry, John.
He wanted me to go and get him some prescription medications,
I had that one as well.
and I told him he needed to go get help, and then I had to continually tell him he needed to go get help, and then he finally agreed.
Mhm.
Good on you. I'm proud of you.
I did have that one, but I also had another one where a Solarian approached me and was like, "Hey, can you help me cheat at gambling?" And I was like, that's not gambling if you're cheating, and also that's illegal, and also the fate of the world is at hand, so bye." And I
Wow,
just left him.
you got that this late in the game?
Yeah, I'd only been to Flux once because like I went and I got the quest where you talk to the bartender and she's like, "Hey, my sister's an undercover agent, but I don't think she's good enough at her job to actually do it." And did all that, and then I played Space Blackjack like twice, and I was like, "All right,
Yeah,
I'm done." And so yeah, he like got kicked out of Flux as I was like coming up the stairs.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So
So I actually, you go ahead, John.
I was just gonna hit on that story about that side mission real quick, just a real quick
Oh
one.
sure.
Yeah, so he approached me when I had no money, and I was like, well, I don't think I really need your help. It's fine. I'll take your device and I'll go do it. And then I was like, is there an option to turn this guy in? And then I found it and I did that.
At that point, I already had so much Paragon, and I was like, gambling is cheating the player anyway, so who cares? Like, it's all scummy morally. So I think my shepherd would be like, does it matter? If you're
Mm,
cheating the cheaters, it doesn't really matter. So I went and did it, and at that point, I think I had like I'd maxed out on money. I had 10 million credits. So like it's also just funny. We talked about this earlier. Some mission rewards, people would be like, I will pay you 200 credits if you do this.
mm,
And I'm like, what? What? So this is pretty much the same thing where I was playing Quasar, and I think I've won like even like after winning 10 games, I think I had like maybe 500 credits that I won from this.
right.
And I was like, I was playing low stakes, and I was very careful to not get caught with it. I went and gave it back to him, and maybe he'll show up in the next game. I don't know. That was kind of fun. I also talked down the attic. So I don't really have a huge problem with the fact that you can kind of like convince people to do things in this game. You can be like, well, I'm going to use my sway, my influence as Commander Shepard to do this or that. But the one with the attic was actually like, it was the funniest one to me because I was like, that is not how this works.
Hmm.
Like, dude's like, come on, man, I just need another hit. And Shepard's like, be a good person, don't use drugs. And like, it works. It's that simple. Like, if Shepard were to run um
Dare.
like addiction clinics or like, yeah, dare or something, like no one would ever use hard drugs. Uh, I thought that was just really funny. I just kind of ignored it. Like I giggled a little bit and just kind of moved on from that.
I,
Um,
I, I was just kind of numb to it at that point because I'd literally like talked people like out of their moral beliefs or, like before just with one dialogue option. So it just didn't phase me. But yeah, it is
there's
kind of
some things that
ridiculous.
though was like at least like some people were like on the line about things, or someone was about to kill someone, and it's like don't kill someone because you can't take this back, and it's a really like serious, egregious thing to do.
Mhm.
And they're like, all right, I'm not going to do it. That makes a little bit more sense, where you're talking someone out of a huge life-changing event that they can never reverse. But something like addiction, where it's like this man is chemically unable to prevent himself from like desiring the substance,
Yeah.
but Shepard's going to be like, this is wrong, don't do it. And he's like, it was that easy. So
Did
anyways,
we? Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep
go
going on a
ahead, go
tangent.
ahead.
Last time, did we talk about how sometimes characters would just like leave halfway through the last sentence they're saying to you?
This
They're just
happened
like,
to me a lot, and I did not enjoy
yeah.
that.
It happened. I think it happened with like the drug addict conversation, but the conversations will end and they'll be like, "All right, Shepard. Well, thank you so much. You really changed my life, and I think that I'm good." And they're just like, they're already gone before they finish like the
Oh,
first half of their sentence, and I'm just like, "What's happening? Who
so
who directed this part?"
I actually thought you meant something else. So what he was doing, what they were doing for me every now and again, it would go, "Well, thank you so much, Shepard. I appreciate,"
Oh no!
and it would just stop their dialogue, and then it
Did you
would
hit
continue.
square?
No, I wouldn't click anything. It would just stop their
Oh.
dialogue. It would just stop mid word, and it would just continue to the next person. And it would make me upset because it would a lot of the times be some of my companions' dialogue. And they don't talk much, but when they do, I want to hear it. And it would
Hmm.
cut them off, and it would just stop their sentence. And I'm just gonna say it's not gonna spoil anything, but one of my companions said something at the very end of the game, but it cut him off, and then it was like the last thing that companion ever said that game during the game, and I was just like, "What did he say?"
It's
These
very
must be like
strange.
console issues,
Must be.
because I did not experience anything like this
It didn't happen
Not
in
even
my
the
very
walking
often.
playthrough.
away thing. That just seems like an animation issue. That's
So
probably
I had
just a
like the
remnant of
walking
an old
away
game.
thing, but
Okay.
it didn't hinder any conversations. It didn't cut off anything. I was trying to think, as
Well,
far as
no, it
I'm
didn't.
aware, like
It didn't cut off any dialogue. It was just like weird because they would like get halfway through their sentence and they would turn their head completely and then be off screen before their sentence finished. Like it would, the dialogue would play. It just wasn't.
oh yeah yeah yeah
I don't want to
yeah.
be like it wasn't a realistic enough game. It felt weird. Like as
Hmm.
like whoever animated that made a weird decision to make them like leave at that point.
Yeah. So I did have that happen actually,
Yeah.
and I kind of like got over it at one point. Like there's the initial thing was like I was just trying to ignore it, and then eventually it was like frustrating because I was seeing the animation so much, because it's the same. They go like this. They gotta make my eyes big for it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
like look away and then like walk away. Anyways, so initially I was just like trying to ignore it, and then I was like frustrated, and then it was funny, and then by the end I was just like so numb to it, or like I wasn't
Mm.
even thinking about it anymore. But yeah, I thought you meant like it was cutting off dialogue, but no, I think it's just that they didn't have enough like animations programmed for the conversation endings. So
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with your thing, John. That sounds wacky.
I have no idea, but it was very annoying when it
I'm
would
sorry to
happen.
hear that. I want to keep going because I want to
Go
hear what
for it.
happens at the end for
Yeah,
everyone,
go ahead.
and I want to make sure that everyone still wants to play the rest of the games. So we go into Flux, talk to Captain Anderson, and left with a couple of choices. I think mostly flavor about how we're feeling. At least initially, you can tell Anderson if you probed him earlier for his feelings on the council and where they were kind of at. Um, with his Spectre training, not training, but I guess his nomination, whatnot. And then I guess it all relates to him being grounded and being uh, control of the Normandy being taken from him. Um, you can have a choice to say, "I know how you felt," and I think I said something along those lines. It doesn't matter too much, like I said, it's flavor, but it's a nice way to kind of tie the story back to things that he'd brought up before to you in
Hmm.
confidence. Um, as we're talking to him, though, he essentially tells you, like, nah, man, I believe you wholeheartedly. Don't question anything you're saying. Let's do this. And as much as I liked the moment where Anderson is like, let's do this, we're gonna take care of stuff, I'm gonna get you back in the Normandy. I was kind of like, I don't know, you have like the one side where it's like the council is like, we don't believe like anything you're saying, dude, and then you have Anderson who's like, I wholeheartedly believe everything you're saying. And I guess Udina is like the middle ground where he's like maybe a little skeptical, but ultimately believes what you're saying. But for the political side of it, is like willing to side with the council and not back you if it's going to cause some type of issue between the humans and the council. Um,
I just honestly thought Udina just used us like a tool the whole time. Honestly, that's how I felt about him.
Oh yeah, it was totally a power grab like the whole time.
mhm. So I do think so, but I do think it's about power. But I think ultimately he does have humanity's interests
Well, it's
at
about
heart.
power for humans, and he's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
human,
True,
so
true.
usually what benefits the race will benefit him as well.
Hmm. Um, but as you're talking to Anderson, he offers you two choices for how to go about this. He's kind of thought out this escape plan. The first plan is to go into CSEC's air traffic control, essentially, and waltz in and be like, turn off the magnetic locks on um, the Normandy, allowing it to escape the Citadel. The second option is for him to go directly into Udina's office and override the orders because Udina was officially the one who grounded the Normandy. And you, as Shepard, are allowed to choose which one you think would be the better plan of action. What did you pick, John?
Udina's office.
Okay, what did you pick, Kurt?
I picked Udina's option,
I
or
picked Udina's
office.
office.
I
Awesome.
I saw the choices, and I was like, I hope. I like turned to my wife who's on the couch, and I was like, I hope he punches him.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. He
His
did.
He
Knocks his
punches him. It's
lights
his
great.
out.
dialogue's
I
great. He's like, "That's the option I wanted to do too."
yeah, it's great. I thought he would like because he talked about like option two is I can sneak into Adina's office and hack his computer. And I was like, okay, so you're gonna try to like wait for him to leave and like get in there. You'll probably get caught. No, it literally like broad daylight. He like, I mean, the door is automatic, but
I
he
didn't
busts down the
summon you.
door, and then he's like, hey, Captain Anderson, what's up? And Captain Anderson's like, just decks him, and then it's like, oh, the computer's already unlocked. Like he didn't hack any. It was so funny.
Told
I
you. That's why
literally like
soldier's the
verbally
best
cheered.
class. You don't need any hacking skill or anything like that. Yeah, it was a very satisfying moment. I remember like giggling just because it was so funny watching him just like man on a mission, like knock his lights out. Very satisfying. I'm not gonna say he didn't deserve it,
I'll say
but
that he did deserve it.
yeah, he did. He did. Um, so I don't know, honestly, and I didn't research this because I might do this on a future playthrough. If you send him through CSEC, I'm not sure if he's going to be arrested. I'm not sure if he's going to be killed or whatever, but it definitely seems like the safer option to send him through Udina's office because the only
Mhm.
real resistance he's met with is Udina. However, this does leave the question of, in the future, what's going to happen between them because they're already on shaky terms, and this is certainly not going to help the relationship. That he just
Hmm.
walked
Wonder
in,
why.
one, knocked his lights out, and two, um, probably the bigger option than just the personal insult is overriding his
Smart
personal
guy.
orders.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, technically mutiny, kinda
I mean, it's treason legally.
treason, treason.
Um, so we'll see what happens from there.
What's a little
So
treason between friends? It's fine.
it ultimately it worked out for him. So well, we'll see actually. We want to get to the end of the game before we talk about that, I guess. So leaving here, we get this cool moment. We're like, punch it, Joker, and we fly out of there. Uh, going to head to Ilos at this point. Um, we fly there through the Mu relay, which we now have mapped on our galaxy map. Um, I'm trying to think what the description of it says. Essentially, it's a dead Prothean planet. I don't think you get really too much from the description there, but you land, and pretty much as soon as you land, uh, you're met with some Geth resistance.
But before you
Uh,
land, I just
Yeah.
wanted to say
yeah, go ahead,
there
hit it.
is a wonderful scene before you land, and it
Oh yeah.
shows some of your companions talking with the crew about this landing and or lack
Hmm.
thereof a good landing position. And you get to see an interaction between various companions such as Tali and um, the sorry that I definitely remember her name.
Liara.
Yeah, her too.
To be fair, you've only had her on your team for like 3 hours, so I can't even be upset that you don't
Not
know her name.
honestly,
It's
probably
really
not even
funny though.
3 hours, but yeah. So yeah, her too, and Joker and the what's the guy's name? The Peckett,
Presley.
Peckett.
Presley.
Oh, Presley.
Navigator Presley.
Yes, him too. And all of them are interacting and trying to get this landing zone figured out. And then Joker finally tells them, "Don't worry, guys, I got this." But it's just a great interaction between all the crew, which is really something I would have expected previously in the game. But just to get the opportunity to see it at all was a very nice interaction there.
And to go back even before that, if you talk to your crewmates when you get back on the Normandy before you take off from the Citadel, or before you choose to go to Ilos on the map, they'll have like different comments about running from the law or whatever, and they're all pretty normal. Rex is like, I respect you, blah blah blah, and then Caden's like, you made the right decision. But then if you talk to Navigator Presley, he's like, I can't believe we're on the run from the law. This is so exciting. He's like a giddy child who's like doing something bad for the first time in his life, and it was really cute.
I regret doing that. I didn't even think about it. I was like in my brain, like, we gotta hurry, we gotta get out of here. So I
Hmm.
immediately was like, galaxy map, Helos, here we go. I really wish I would have done that now. Um,
But the landing
which
scene was cool once you get to Ilos.
So yeah, that is really cool scene because like going like even further because they're all arguing about like how unsafe it is, and I think that they say I think it's Presley who says we need at least 100-meter straight strip for that for like the bare minimum for like a landing
Hmm.
for the Mako, and Joker's like I can do it with 50, and
20.
Yeah, it was
was it
20.
20?
Mm-hmm.
It was 20.
Oh, it's 20. Gotcha. See, I don't even remember that, so that's even better. It's a nice moment because it also you know we talked about briefly how you get these brief moments with some of your other crew members. You have really the four big name crew members. You have Chief Engineer Adams, Navigator Presley, you have Joker, and then you have Dr. Chocolates. And really, I think Joker is the one with the most personality that we at least see outright.
Yeah.
Um, but we get plenty of time with our teammates to either talk to them or bring them on missions and hear their witty banter between each other or with you or to other NPCs. But it's a nice moment to get to see Presley and Joker having this banter and get to see Joker actually perform because most of the time we just kind of hear about Joker doing something. Joker's like, I'm doing this, Commander, or we hear about it kind of after the fact.
You're
But
going out
this
of the
is
boundaries, Commander.
exactly, yeah. But this is us actually getting to see Joker perform some crazy techniques. So that is a really nice moment of just kind of building up your crew and making them feel more like well-rounded characters and people, even if you can't use them out on the battlefield. Um, so the Mako gets dropped off on Ilos. I'm gonna call it Ilos, I think.
That's
So
how they say it.
cool. You get dropped off there in this 20-foot landing or 20-meter landing zone, uh, and are immediately greeted by Saren and some of his Geth bodyguards. Um, they lock the doors behind them. Don't really take any time to shoot at you or anything like that.
Have you
And you kind
guys
of have to,
seen Saren?
yeah,
I think he was there, yeah, with the Geth when they were closing the doors.
yeah. He's like right there at the very beginning, and they're closing the doors. and
I must have missed
you
that
might
cutscene
not have
somehow.
seen him, but yeah,
And
I think that's for everyone. I think everyone sees that because it's supposed to be like the race against time. I think is actually the name of this mission,
I remember what
and
happened.
um, did you skip it or walk out of the room?
My washing machine went uneven, and I had to go do that, and I was listening, and
yeah.
I just kind of missed it
He
because,
doesn't say anything. He
yeah,
just kind of like points and like walks away. So
yeah. So when I got back in here, it was like, yes, the door is locked and shut. We must find another way in.
Hmm.
And
mm,
so I just thought that was it because I had that going on at the same time. How dare I try to keep my clothes and house clean? All right.
dare you.
Anyway, go ahead.
So I want to talk about Ilos real quick. Um, there's some fighting that you have to do to open this door. I think that's kind of the more boring part. But as far as the world itself is concerned, um, really, really cool world design. Um, we've been on other planets with Prothean ruins before. Most of them are pretty much nondescript or just, there are pyramids, nothing really there. The only other planet that I can think of is Theros, where we get to see this Prothean architecture more widespread. And we're up on the skyscrapers and we're in the skyway, the highway in the sky. So we're really not even seeing a lot of it there. We're just seeing the stairways and the tops of the buildings. And this is a completely different view where we're actually down on the ground. And we know that um, the planet is largely, I think it says like oxidized, so there's rust everywhere. And we get to the surface and everything's kind of grown up. Um, and we don't really see any skeletons necessarily, but we see what I can assume are maybe Prothean corpses that have been kind of like melded in this like almost Pompeii-ish way to like different like chairs, and I'm not sure if they're statues or what,
Yeah, I
but
thought those were statues, but that's an interesting take.
they might be, but they kind of match what we've seen in the visions of like the
I
Protheans
likened it
kind
to
of like,
Pompeii whenever I seen them too.
yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of, death by fire. And we'll get into that a little bit later. It doesn't necessarily line up, but again, I just felt like this. Again, Pompeii is the best description. It's a world, another civilization that's just kind of frozen in time,
Hmm.
um, and it has this really tranquil sadness about it. So after we get these doors open, we're allowed to continue through a underground bunker. It's called the Archive, and we get this really cool shift in the music. The music stops with our like previous, fight music, whatnot, to actually the title screen music. It's really floaty. This sci-fi-ish space opera music. I'm not going to say it's generic at all because it very much fits Mass Effect, um, but it's a complete tonal shift as we are driving along. And this is the first point in the game where with the Mako, we're not having to, you know, jump over a hillside or a mountain or shoot at something in the distance or dodge, being shot. We're just going straight and observing this underground world that's since been lost. And I think this is really where Mass Effect just kind of reaches ahead. It reaches this peak for me. I know you can argue maybe the climax of this game was for Meyer. Um, Narratively, the climax was there, but really, this is where the game hits that point where I'm like, I feel immersed. I feel like I'm seeing this world that's long gone, that's a part of a galaxy that's long gone. Um, as you're driving through, I think I brought Garrus and Rex, and they talk about you're seeing these glowing lights up on the walls, and some of them look like tubes kind of sticking out. Um, I think either you ask or Garrus or Rex ask, like, "What is this?" And someone says, "Looks like stasis pods." I don't know who did you bring with you. Either one of you can talk about who you brought with you.
I brought Garrus and Tally, just sort of my default.
Gotcha. Did you have any cool dialogue from them?
It was basically the same as what you were talking about, where Garrus was. They were just talking about the architecture, and then Garrus said, "What are these things?" And then Tally says that I was like, "Oh, they look like stasis pods."
How about you, John?
I brought Garrison Rex, so same
Gotcha.
exact
Pretty much
dialogue
the same
as
thing
you.
I got. So you drive along again. This is maybe 30 seconds to a minute. It's just tranquil driving with the main menu theme playing in the background. And eventually you're kind of caught between two force fields, and whoever you brought with you freaks out. Oh no, it's a trap. Uh, there's no Geth around though. Kind of bad trap. There's no Geth around. Door opens to your side, and you can get out of the Mako and go through it. Where you're greeted by this AI, this kind of staticky hologram that's clearly old. It's clearly, almost defunct, um, but it's talking to you, and you can communicate back with it. And Garrus makes mention that he can understand it as well, um, or on my game at least, which
Garrus and Rex
pretty,
could understand it on mine.
yeah, yeah, both
Neither of them
can
could
understand.
understand it on my. Well, hold on. Actually, so we skipped over a little bit of a section, and that's fine because it was just
Mhm.
more shooty McShooty. But before the Mako driving section,
Yes, 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 yes.
we
Okay.
had to gun down a bunch of Geth to like turn off the security or whatever so the door would open back up. And when you turn on security, that same or a similar sort of VI AI projection pops up. And at least when I was playing, Shepard could understand it, but my companions couldn't. My companions were saying, this must be like Prothean language, and apparently Shepard can understand it because of his exposure to like the Prothean beacons.
And the
And since
cipher specifically.
yeah, and I don't want to ruin your momentum with your storytelling,
No,
writer,
you're good.
but about that section, there's some cool things in like the shooting section. Like you could hack some stations and summon some Geth Colossi or Colossus to like help you out, I believe. I didn't find them until after I'd already finished like the battle, but then they like were docile when I summoned them. So I thought that was a nice touch, even if I missed it. But I also think that this shooty section is an example of some of the rough level design, in my opinion, that this
Mhm.
game can have. Because I love open areas in games that let you kind of explore and take it different routes. But really, what it is it's just a bunch of winding areas that all lead back to like a central area, and you got to figure out which one is the correct one to go to. And then at the end of it, you had to make sure you went to a specific console that's just kind of in the middle of like a multi level thing. Make sure you interact with that or you can't move forward. And there's a couple times I thought I was glitching out because there were like green doors that wouldn't open. And I realized that I just had to go interact with something and come back. And so, yeah, minor complaints. We can get back to like the cool revelations that are about to happen.
Yeah,
But
you're good.
I, you talking about all the like taking in the wonder of the world, wonders of this environment. I felt that at first, and then I sort of felt that by the end of it as well. But in that middle section, it was just me wandering around, checking every nook and cranny because apparently I missed something. And again, I'm directionally challenged in games and in real life, so part of that's on me. But as we'll see later in like the last shooty section, it was very linear, and because it was like a race against time impact, it was more impactful to me that I didn't have to like get lost and figure out what was happening.
I completely agree with that. I'm actually glad you brought that up. I think part of the reason why I was going to skip over it is because it just didn't really stand out to me. Um, I didn't dislike it, but I was just
Mm.
kind of indifferent to a lot of it. And there's other points which we will talk about later, which I was absolutely into it, and the action felt real and like in your face. And I didn't feel that race against time here because this area it was so open. They bring it up. Saren he's on. You're on Saren's heels, and he is right at the conduit. He could be there before we even get through this door. We have to hurry, and I knew that I didn't have to hurry, and the area
Mm.
was too open for me to really move through it in a hurry. Um, And on the subject of activating these deactivated geth to help you, there's maybe one of them that you can actually use, but there's like three or four others in the very end of this area that you can't get to until you're actually there for the fight. So I guess you would have to like run to them. 'Cause I checked. There's no other path to them other than through
Hmm.
like the front door that you came through. So as soon as the fight begins, you just have to like book a line to them and then activate them. But there's four of them in this area, and there were not enough enemies to justify doing it, especially
Hmm.
because I think you're more likely to die trying to bum rush the console than you would be just bunkering down and shooting at a distance. Now, maybe if you're playing on a higher like difficulty, maybe there's going to be just tons and tons of enemies there. Um, but there weren't enough enemies, and they were easy enough to kill at this point because I was
Hmm.
level 28, 29. I didn't feel the need to turn them on. And when I did, I was like, this was a complete waste. I thought maybe they're going to come back later, and they just don't.
Hmm.
So I get that. It kind of kills the momentum that you're feeling at the first half of this, kills that
Yeah.
that real drive that like Joker and Presley and the rest of the team's conversation about dropping you in this hot zone and then seeing Saren walk away is just almost immediately killed by that. Um, I think that ultimately it doesn't matter by the end because I'm back into it. Like as soon as like I said, this for me personally, as soon as this main menu music starts, I felt like all right, I'm back in this, you know, immersive environment. But I definitely do feel that. John, did you have
And
any feelings
oh,
like that? Did it kind of kill the momentum for you as well? I know you kind of walked away, so maybe you weren't entirely immersed because you're watching machine at this point.
So I didn't feel that rushed. That might have been just because of the stuff I was doing at my own home at the time. But I guess that momentum kind of got broken down, taking the break in between the two games, I would say, because I went with like nearly a week and a half, 2 weeks between playing. So I kind of lost all the momentum build up in that regard. But getting back into it, um, I could feel that the momentum was picking up. But then I get trapped in here with this thing, and I exhausted every piece of dialogue it had, and that definitely cut down on any I need to go because I exhausted every piece of dialogue it had. So I spent a lot of time just reading that. So that also kind of took away that any any tension that had been building up.
So
um,
Kurt
and one
brings
more
up.
quick like fun
Yeah, go ahead.
fact before we get into with that AI. But if you save, you know how when you save in a given location, it tells you what location that you save in. If you save during that Mako section, that's just like a straight shot with the music that you're talking about, Rider.
Mhm.
It's labeled as the trench run, and I just think that's
That's
like
cool.
I
Nice
don't know,
little
that's a Star
reference.
Wars reference. I think that's cool.
Um, yeah, so Kurt brought up earlier the at this end of the section where like we talked about our momentum was kind of being killed because we're having to fight these Geth in a very open area. The race for time kind of seems non-existent. Uh, there is a cool moment where we're talking to a VI, a virtual intelligence, which is essentially just like a computer, more or less.
Hmm.
It doesn't have any like real further knowledge. It doesn't learn. It just is, and it just works on like a very standard computer basis. I don't know how else to explain it. And we do have that moment where Shepard understands it and the other squad mates don't. I think one of them actually asks in my game, is this an AI? And you're like, no, it's not. And you can kind of interpret like this seems like maybe a warning message. I don't think you can say that, but it's
Hmm.
kind of what I, as the player, interpreted. They're like, it's the end, run, hide, scream, that type of stuff. Really kind of scary, looming, ominous message. But anyways, we can continue through this section. Uh, like I said, we drive through the archive, see all these stasis pods, and after we're put in a force field, we can go down this corridor and we see, like I said, a uh, hologram that's kind of staticky. It resembles what we've seen earlier. Um, we go up to it though, begin talking to it, realize it's actually an AI. Both of our squad mates can understand it as well. And it tells us that it's actually observed our conversations as we've been here and translated it into a language that we would understand, which is extremely interesting on its own, that it's this intelligent, able to do this. As we talk to it, we realize that this is, of course, a Prothean AI. and this AI was programmed after a lead researcher, a Prothean researcher that was working on Ilos in this facility. We can talk to it as much as we want, or just kind of say bye. I don't know who in their right mind would say bye to it. There's kind of what John was talking about. There's this feeling of urgency because you're like, okay, I need to hurry. I need to hurry because you've been reminded multiple times that Saren is right at the conduit. But this is the biggest like nest egg of information that you will get in
Mm-hmm.
this game, and it's criminal if you do not just unpack all of it. And there's so much to unpack in this conversation. I don't know. Should probably go look at my recording and can tell you. I would be willing to bet there's at least 10 minutes of dialogue that you can have with this thing. And it's mostly just exposition, but it doesn't feel like an info dump to me, at least. These are things that at this point you're like, I deserve to know. And it makes sense that given the fact that this is a Prothean technology that's intact, can understand and conversate with you, that it would provide these things. So it didn't take
Mm-hmm.
me out of character. It didn't feel like this is just the game explaining things to me verbally. Um, you get a couple of really great things as far as, the AI explains that they were researching here on Ilos. It was a research facility. They kind of uncovered the fact that they are part of a greater cycle. They realized that the civilization before them was wiped out by the Reapers, and so they intended to try and prevent this process from happening. There's a colony here, largely just a research colony. Um, they were doing their best to research about the Reapers, and they found out throughout the process of their research that the Citadel was actually a mass relay itself. Um, Huge revelation, kind of terrifying because the Reapers have a direct path to the heart of uh, galactic, civilization. They don't have to kind of progress through every mass relay individually. They can
Mm-hmm.
just zoom straight to the heart and have access to everything from that point. Um, I'm going to kind of break this down in chunks, and I'm going to start with this. So I think this is really the first one we're like, okay, awesome, crazy. What did you guys think about this? Did you have any kind of inkling that this was going to happen, or were you just completely surprised, or were you like, all right, that's interesting, but didn't really feel anything else about it?
It made me sad when I found out that the keepers were bad because I liked the keepers.
Too much, too much.
What we get there? That's in this.
We
That's in
do
this
get there. I
dialogue
was going
tree.
to talk about it in a sec.
Okay, well,
That's fine. You
just
can we can. So let me give a little background on that real quick. So we do end up figuring out that the Citadel was created with the sole intention of essentially routing all galactic civilization to it. It is the center of galactic civilization, and they more or less figure this out through mathematic, like uh, calculations, algorithms, whatever. They're just so precise. The Reapers are with how they're going to clean up the galaxy that they just know this is the right place, the right distance for relays, for life to develop and get here. We're also given the bombshell around the same time that the Keepers, our little bug buddies that are staffing the Citadel, are actually under Reaper control, and that they are very likely the first or one of the first civilizations conquered by the Reapers. Um, so, given that, Kurt, you were very upset hearing that
yeah,
the Keepers were under their control.
yeah. I was really sad about that because when at the very beginning of the game, I was going through all the lore from the codex of all the different races, and it got to the keepers, and they're like, they just live at the Citadel. No one knows where they come from. No one knows how they reproduce. There's always this many of them. If one of them dies, they are immediately replaced. And we don't really know what they do, but we know that they make everything work. And on one hand, I guess you could look at that from a perspective of like, well, that's just kind of lazy writing. Just like, how does this whole big station work? And everybody's like, I don't know, it just does. But I thought it was really cool that there was like so much mystery, and even in this world, where there is like faster than light travel and like all these alien species, like like communing together, that there were still mysteries, and that this species itself was so mysterious. And I wasn't sure if it was like fully organic or part like cybernetic. Like I don't know. I thought they were really just very an interesting concept, and it makes perfect sense narratively, and it's a good twist to take these seemingly like innocuous creatures and make them the tools for like the ultimate destruction of the galaxy. It's a good twist, but I just really like the simplicity of the lore of just they just exist and they do stuff that helps everything function. I don't know. I had a soft spot for the keepers for whatever reason.
But I think that's what makes them so dangerous is because they are just it's just for God knows how long, because we as
Hmm.
like in the universe don't know how long this has been happening. They've just been there existing, working,
Yeah.
doing their job. And because everything is so complex and everything's accepted as technology created by the previous generation, the civilization that came before us made all of this. The keepers just kind of exist here. We're not going to mess up something, like if
Hmm.
it's not broke, don't fix it. And there's even we talked about this last episode. There's laws in place that I think prohibit people from talking to the keepers,
Yeah.
from getting close to them because they keep everything running. And it makes sense that we don't know what's happening, but they've kept all of this running. We're not going to mess with it because for all we know they could shoot all 12 million of us out into the vacuum of space because we
Hmm.
frustrated them or something one day. So it's really interesting because that's the way like a lot of the game kind of hinges on, or like the story about the fall of galactic civilization is this kind of complacency that everyone kind of feels, where we're just going to use this technology that the previous guys came up with, and we're just not going to question it.
Okay,
Hmm.
Um,
I have a few different takes on all of that you two just talked about.
yeah, go ahead.
So, for first, I wasn't surprised that the Citadel was made by the Reapers. I was surprised it was a mass relay. I wasn't surprised that they made it. I just assumed at this point, just how advanced the Reapers were, just on what we know about them at this point, that they probably ended up designing the mass relays themselves. And I didn't think they were using it to farm humanity or for whatever reason they're doing these things. We shall see. But I don't see I don't see the race that they I don't see them as evil. You just talked about the different aspects of them. They were designed or bred or a little of both by the Reapers to keep the Citadel up and running.
Hmm.
That was the main goal. At this point, I would say that they probably don't even know anything about themselves. They just know their job. So there's probably no inherent evil as far as I can tell what I've learned about them. They just know that that's their job. Think of them like a worker bee. The bee doesn't have a mind of its own at this point. It just does what it's meant to do, and the Citadel is their hive, and they have their own respective jobs that they complete for it. So I still don't see them as inherently evil or having bad intentions. But you could also liken them to servants of a castle, and how, like Ryder had mentioned previously, it may come as a shock that they just show up out of nowhere or do these things. But at some point, you just become complacent, and they just are in the background, and you never notice they're there. However,
Hmm.
just like a servant in a castle, they could be plotting against you, and unbeknownst to even the keepers, they are plotting against you, and they have specific instructions on what to do. So, but that's I wouldn't call them evil because they don't realize what they are doing.
Yeah, you're right. Evil is definitely not the right word that I should have used, because I believe the VI that you're talking about talks about how just like Saren, the keepers were initially like influenced by the Reaper's ability, indoctrination, and then eventually it was basically like bred into them to just be obedient, kind of like you would with like a work dog or like a service dog or something like that. So yeah, evil is definitely not the right word, but I was still disappointed to find out that they were doing things that were bad, even if it wasn't just inherently being evil themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree with what John said. They're, if anything, it's just completely sad that they are what they are.
Yeah, it is.
Um, and they have no recollection of, like John said, of what they are. I think the AI says that at one point. They probably don't even know that they are the keepers. They might not even resemble what they used to be at this
Mm.
point because, again, who knows how long this has been going on. If you think 50,000 years is a long time on its own, but we're talking about from us
Infinite.
to the
Yeah.
exactly from at least the previous generation. That's 100,000 years, and then you keep going back. Who knows where it begins. There's something. Oh, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask if you guys did the mission where you like scanned all the keepers.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that was one of those things where it's like, I don't know, this is illegal. Do I want to do illegal things as like Paragon Shepherd? But then I ended up doing it anyway because it's like, well, we do need to know more about it, and I'm not hurting anything. Um, I think it would be cool if that had some effect, like doing that quest would have had some effect on your understanding of the keepers, like moving forward, and maybe it does, like in the subsequent games. But as it stands, I just kind of did it, and they're like, all right, thanks, bye, and that was kind of it.
So that kind of, not that specifically, but just thinking about optional things. Did you guys scan like every planet, or go read like every planet's description for the most part?
Most of them.
I kind
How
of
about you,
fell
John?
off on that practice. After,
Gotcha.
the ones where you just survey them or you can't survey them, you can't land on them, I kind of quit reading those just because I had read, you know, at least
Mm.
50 of them, if I had to guess. That's probably overestimating, but it felt like that many. And I was just like, okay, well, I'm not. It's interesting to hear about this, but, after so many times, I was like, I get it. It's a planet.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really interesting that when each there's always a planet in like a cluster that has like some cool thing about it. Like there's one that has, I don't know if it's like a mountain range or something, but from orbit there's a shape on it that looks like a Solarian goddess, and so a lot of
Mhm.
like there's like a sect of Solarians who like think that planet's very important to like their religion, and there are others that talk about this used to be an area for smuggling and then such and such disaster happens, or like this place would be perfectly you know it would be perfect for colonizing, it'd be perfectly like able to be inhabited if it wasn't for just these giant thunderstorms that all the time that basically just cause half the planet to be on fire constantly. And so it's a lot of interesting stuff, but then eventually it just gets to the point where it's like I'm not retaining this, it's not essential information, and I'm just kind of getting dragged down because I put 30 hours in and I'm just kind of tired of reading, but it's all fascinating.
So the reason why I brought it up is because, I mean, there is a lot. I did every single planet. I don't remember most of them, but the ones that stuck with me are the ones that, and this is probably a second playthrough thing. Like, I don't remember them from the first time. But if you guys play this again in the future, you will probably be like, wait a minute. Like, particularly after these revelations right here is where I think it's relevant. Because there's a lot of planets where you read the description and it talks about how there used to be intelligent life here. Or there used to be spacefaring civilization here, based on, you can tell that, uh, some of the faster than light like drive cores were discharged here because you can tell by this element's presence in the core, or like of the surface of the planet. There's one in particular that very well could not have any, like, bearing on the story, but for me, like, I remember it very, very particularly because it's so, like I said, from the surface of this moon, you can look up and see this planet, and the description of the planet really, really stuck with me, um, because it was something along the lines of the atmosphere on this planet is completely burnt out. There's no atmosphere at all on this planet anymore, and that there is a trench. They call it. There's some type of like canyon or something like that name for it. That is literally, like, as far as you can tell, the length of the planet, and it's hundreds of kilometers like wide and like thousands of kilometers long. and the same thing, like a few hundred kilometers deep, just super deep into the crust. And the description says something along the lines of, it looks like initially we thought it was like natural forming, but it didn't make sense. But scientists have pretty much come to the conclusion that it's actually from the discharge of some massive weapon.
Mm.
And it's from, I think they said like 134 million years ago. And you can take that at face value. I don't take that as face value because I think that ultimately it all kind of like it comes full circle, those little details, because there's other times where you're on a planet and you're looking at it and it says you know there is subterranean life here. Initially we thought it was like lava flows or something like that, but we realized that these were like concentric like tunnels dug out, and there's this and that, so it seems like intelligent life dug this. There's a lot of intelligent life that's gone seemingly,
Hmm.
and I don't take it as just coincidence that there's a planet where the atmosphere is burnt out. No atmosphere possible on this planet anymore. And there's a 1,000 kilometer long gash inside of this planet from a weapon hitting it. Um, and I mean, that the reason why I brought this up is because I was talking about how deep this kind of goes as far as the how long the Reapers have been around, how no one really knows. And we know based on that, the observations of this crater, this gash rather, that was like 134 million years ago. And they mentioned that the Reapers come in like 50,000 year cycles, as far as we can tell. And that would put it at that's at least 2,680 cycles ago,
Hmm.
which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong here. This is not me like spoiling something for you guys. This is clear, like just completely conjecture here. I don't remember, and I don't know, and I don't think this planet's significant in any way. It's just some minor detail, but it's intentional. They added it for a reason, and given the fact that we don't know how long they've been around, that's crazy to think about. That like that long ago, that the Reapers, 2,500 cycles ago, have been around that long potentially. Um, I don't know if it was caused by reapers or by some ancient civilization trying to fight back against them. Cool, regardless.
Yeah. It's really
Um,
cool.
Continuing with our conversation with this AI, we can kind of ask what happened. How did you guys survive? Why aren't you wiped out if you were here? And essentially what he tells us, the AI, is that when the Reapers came in, they immediately torched the Citadel. All records, official records of Ilos, were pretty much killed immediately because this
Hmm.
was such a high level research facility. This wasn't publicized to the rest of Prothean space. So the only place that really knew about this was the Citadel. And since the Citadel was gone, no one else other than the people on Ilos knew about Ilos as a research facility. So they immediately went underground, pulled everyone into the archives, and put them into stasis with the idea of waiting out the Reaper War to see what was going to happen, who was going to come out victorious from this. Um, the real significance of Ilos is that this was developing something that's called the conduit, which is why we were sent here in the first place. The conduit has a couple of uh, abilities, I guess. The first and most important is that it actually closes off um, the Reapers from using the Citadel as a mass relay. This is really important because it prevents them from coming back from dark space. At this point, as far as we know, the only way for the Reapers to come back into the galaxy is to use the Citadel as their mass relay. So they essentially reprogrammed the keepers to prevent them from doing this. The second part is that the conduit acts as a backdoor, a miniature mass relay, to allow people to essentially warp or teleport, shoot across the galaxy directly into the Citadel. That's why this is such a big deal. This is why it's so hush hush and why they went underground. The AI even tells us that it waited and waited and waited and waited, and this took hundreds of years for this enslavement, galaxy-wide genocide, just a mixture of awful things that the Reapers are committing for it to actually kind of fizzle out. And it wasn't until the very last Protheans died that the Reapers made their way back out of the galaxy. At which point, I think there were only 12 or 13 researchers left of the Protheans, and they were the top level researchers, the only ones left alive. They were woken out of their cryo sleep and went right back to work to give future generations, hopefully, a chance at beating back the Reapers.
I want to
Go ahead,
touch
John.
on that. Yeah, so the intelligence, the AI there, actually explains that to conserve power during all of this war and onslaught, that it would slowly turn off different sections of crew members that were on the research station to save the personnel and keep itself online. And ultimately, it had to keep shutting down different crew and stations and sections until only it could save those last 12 top crew members. And you actually have the option to berate the AI for this. What decisions did you two choose to do on this? Because you could berate the AI or you could be understanding with it. Did you guys try to berate the AI for its decisions here?
I think I chose the neutral decision, which was like, so you betrayed them, and then the VI is like, well, actually, this was in my contingency programs to do this, so no, it wasn't like a choice. It was just like following orders.
Hmm.
I think that the betrayed option is actually the Paragon option here, um, which is it kind of makes sense, but
Hmm.
it's one of those frustrating. So I'm going to get off on a little tangent here. It's one of those moments where it's kind of weird because I've voiced a little bit of my frustration with the way that the morality system works in this game and other games. How something that the creators deem as the moral option might not actually make sense. And I think that like as awful as it is that thousands, tens of thousands, who knows how many Protheans died out because of this, that ultimately the Protheans knew at this point that they were gone. There was no chance. And they were intending to protect future civilizations. They're intending to give us as humans, the Asari, the Krogan, everyone else a fighting chance against the Reapers. They knew they weren't coming back at this point. There weren't enough for genetic diversity or just, to try and find worlds that were fertile and could actually sustain a population. So it's kind of weird for the Paragon option because I actually chose the Paragon option to be like, you betrayed them. Like, no, of course you didn't betray them. It doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
And like, it's not just ignorant, but it's just also stupid that that's considered like the Paragon option. That like, shouldn't the this is where I think that, again, the morality is more complex. The Paragon option could be seen as saving as many as possible rather than focusing on the needs of just like a few, and the few being the Protheans, the many being the rest of galactic
Right, and
civilization.
that's
Yeah.
actually why I brought this up, is because actually I was given the renegade points for this at the end of this conversation. I believe it was because of what I said next, and I said that I agreed with the AI in its decisions, and then because I'm somebody that has a background in computer science, so I have, I can't tell you that I know how to program an artificial intelligence, but I can tell you that if ultimately, if it was put into its core systems to save a very specific set of people, like, it does not factor in anything else. It's going to do what it was programmed to do. So the ultimate intention of these researchers was they knew they needed their best people to stay alive. And ultimately, that we'll get into what happens after this. But I completely agree with the AI's choice, and I was glad there was an option for that because there's, you know, this was a decision that happened, like we said, nearly 50,000 years ago or so at this point. And, there's no, this is an AI. It doesn't matter if you're going to berate it or not. Like, this is a decision that was made, and I was glad you were given the choice to, at least agree with it, even though for some reason it's the renegade option. That's what it was
Mhm.
programmed to do, and it did just that. And Just thought it was pointless to berate it for doing so.
Well, and like I said, I mean, Shepard understands that like this was done to give them a fighting chance. Like, why does it make sense for Shepard to be like, you evil thing, you, for
Yeah,
like
it's weird.
for potentially saving his race? Because 100%, even if it doesn't go anywhere past this, even if this series ends with the complete collapse of galactic society, at the very least the Protheans have prolonged it for current galactic society by
Hmm.
creating the conduit, because we're again furthering this given information that the Reapers are locked in dark space right now, and that I think Shepard asked something on my playthrough, asked something along the lines of like, how didn't they know this? Well, they're one in dark space. They're going to like a stasis more or less to preserve energy in between cycles, and Sovereign was here in uh, our galaxy, and Sovereign was he's the um,
He's the
he's
herald.
the messenger. Yes, he's the herald is what he's called of like the end of times, and that makes sense. So he's kind of left to kind of monitor progress of galactic society, and when it's at a point where it's time to harvest, he calls in the cavalry and everyone, all the other Reapers come from dark space. Well, they more or less tell us that he wakes up probably every few centuries, kind of like poke around and see what's what, and you know he couldn't do anything on his own. He had to rely on galactic civilization to be advanced enough to naturally, like organically, reach the Citadel, and then have to figure out what's happening, why, are we shut off from it, and then somehow open it back up for us. And, the Protheans are responsible for preventing the immediate invasion. Um, Really, really interesting stuff there from my perspective. I was again, I've seen this before. I forgot a lot of it, but she'll just absolutely like immerse and just like, oh, this is such good writing. It only comes at the downside, in my opinion, something John's already brought up, that you're again reminded you got to hurry, you got to hurry, you got to hurry, and
Hmm.
Saren is during this probably 10-minute conversation, just I don't know, I guess casually waddling along, but. Uh, any else that really stood out to you guys? I've tried to pretty much touch the real big things here. Either one of you can take it if you have anything else that really stood out to you.
I think you were pretty thorough in my opinion.
Yeah, that covered everything that I remembered on these conversations.
Cool. So from here, the AI is like, all right, well, good luck, and it's almost touching. I can't remember the exact words, but I mean, I think the AI says something along the lines of, we wanted you to have the chance, so we didn't, and I don't know. My heart kind of breaks for the Protheans because the Protheans aren't the first and potentially
Hmm.
won't be the last, and it's even worse because you're thinking about like full scale genocide of the Protheans were widespread enough to cover the entire galaxy versus in our current cycle we have humans have their own portion, Turians, every species have its own like portion of space, but we know that there are trillions of lives that are like on the line at this point, and very likely trillions of lives at that point in previous. So who
Hmm.
knows how many, maybe quadrillions of people have died out over the course of the history of the galaxy. Um, we end up leaving this conversation on a mission. Go find Saren. We fight a few more Gath along the way. It's a pretty linear section, just kind of pow pow as we drive through at the remaining Gath, and we get to the very end of this and the kind of corridor, and we get to like a countdown timer. We only have, I think, 30 seconds to get through before it closes. And we can see, what was it?
It was 40.
Was it
Not that
40
it
seconds?
matters. I think
Okay.
so.
It's, it might have been
Doesn't
40.
matter.
30 seemed less arbitrary for some reason. Point
No, it's
is, we
pretty
have
arbitrary.
very little time, and we can see in the distance that the conduit is there, and it looks like a miniature mass relay, which is what we're told. back on the subject of the AI real quick, we can ask actually what happened to the remaining Prothean researchers. And this part was even like
Oh
as
yeah,
sad as everything else was. This like really hit me. I was like, oh man,
yeah, it
you know,
was
they're
rough.
they're alone in a doomed galaxy. There's no chance of survival. Where do you go? And they collectively decided as a group to go back to the Citadel, to use the conduit to take them to the Citadel. It's a back door, but it's a one-way trip. Um, and the AI tells us that there's probably no food or water. So the AI's best guess is that they just died a slow death, starvation, or dehydration, and it's just absolutely, absolutely sad. And I thought like, well, why weren't they found? But then thinking about it, it's been 50,000 years. I'm sure part of the keeper's job is like clean up and like
Mm.
maintenance and making it the citadel look like it wasn't recently destroyed. So I'm sure that their corpses are long gone. But anyways, we see that this miniature mass relay, the conduit's closing. We drive through it, some Dukes of Hazard stuff. We zoom through it, and it teleports us to the Citadel. And what is something I completely forgot, but an amazing example of this idea and drama in you know movies, sometimes in books. I've told John about this actually the other day. We were talking about it. Chekhov's gun. When we land in the Citadel, we actually shoot out of the mass relay statue. What we
Mm.
thought was a statue, what has been thought for the last few thousand years to be a statue, is actually a working miniature mass relay. Super, super cool information because you can see this on the Citadel. You can go and like listen to, I think Avina is her name, the
Mm.
Asari AI, tell you that this was built by the Protheans. Now you're told at the beginning of the game everything is built by the Protheans. Like, and she says this was probably built to commemorate their technology and it's blah blah blah. And you're like, okay, yeah, cool.
Makes
And
sense.
this
Yeah.
is it's funny because this is the only thing in the game that's Prothean technology that's actually like Prothean technology. Everything else in the game is actually built by the Reapers. And then you have this one like miniature mass relay that was built by the Protheans but was thought to be a statue. And the idea of Chekhov's gun comes from the fact that Chekhov was a famous filmmaker who said that if you walk into in the movie, you walk into grandfather's house and there's a gun over the mantelpiece, the gun needs to be shot before the end of the story. Now, this is an example of this because there's this mysterious statue here, and it's just kind of left as like, huh, weird. They built a statue to commemorate the mass relays, which again, given the information that they didn't actually build the mass relays, why would they build it in the first place? And it's because it was actually a mass relay. Go ahead,
But
Kurt.
you said that the Protheans built that miniature mass relay, but
Mm-hmm.
we're led to believe that the Reapers made everything, including the conduits, because that allowed like their version of Saren to infiltrate the Citadel when the time was right, to activate the mass relay to allow the rest of the Reapers to come. Because yeah, yeah, because how would if the Protheans made that mass relay, how would it connect to conduits if it's a
So
one-way trip?
the Protheans made the conduit. The Reapers never made the conduit. The Citadel itself was a mass relay to allow the Reapers to come from dark space, and the
Mm-hmm.
way that the Citadel was activated was through the Keepers, where they would send a
Mm-hmm.
signal, essentially like brainwave stuff, to them because they're synthetic, and it would activate the Reapers the Keepers, that is, to essentially do their little typing or whatever
Right.
and initiate the procedure to turn the Citadel into an activated mass relay. So the Protheans are the ones that made that statue and they made the conduit. The Reapers didn't have any hand in making the conduit.
And also, the Protheans made it where the keepers would not send out that signal. They were able to bypass that and have them not send out the
Hmm.
signal, which is causing all of these
Mm-hmm.
issues with Saren because he's being tricked by Sovereign to get that signal sent out one way or another.
Is
Yeah, I
that
guess I'll just have to read up on it because I don't understand how the Like, did the Protheans make the conduit and the miniature mass relay like just in advance of
Yeah.
the Reapers coming?
So
For, to what ends?
they had already made the conduit is a two things. The smaller thing is that it's a mass relay, which allows them
Mm-hmm.
to move in a one-way path from Ilos to
Citadel.
the Citadel. And I don't know the specifics of that. You can take it as maybe they were just trying to create their own like miniature form of like mass relay travel, or maybe they were
Reverse
trying
engineered,
to,
probably.
yeah, or they're trying to create their own massive mass relays, but just kind of started with this. But the bigger thing that the conduit does is that it overrides the keeper's um, abilities to kind of communicate with the Reapers. So it prevented them from initiating the sequence to turn the Citadel into a mass relay.
Yeah, and I understand that, but my understanding was that the Protheans that survived, who were let out of stasis, were the ones who created the algorithm or whatever that would prevent the keepers from activating like the Reaper teleports. So I guess my confusion is if that's what the conduit does, how did I don't know? The timeline doesn't make sense to me. If why the Protheans had the conduit and had the mini mass relay if they didn't need that technology until after the Reapers invaded.
So I get what you mean. I think very likely what it could be, and I guess my kind of canon for it, and I think it makes sense, is that they were already working on this technology to create a mass relay, their own mass relays. And I think actually Avena brings it up that like maybe they were trying to create their own, or they were like trying to create like a miniature. I think she calls it so they're trying to create like a miniature mass relay. So maybe they
Hmm.
were doing that prior to developing the technology to, you know,
Yeah,
make the keepers
and then they
docile.
realized that their mass relay could be what's the word, jerry rigged to
That
stop the
yeah,
signal
for
to the Reapers.
that's more what I
Gotcha.
was getting at with that. Thank you, John. I was like talking in circles, but I think that's the idea because that mass relay is also the miniature one is on the Presidium, which is
Hmm.
like the center of the it's the center of the actual Citadel. So it kind of makes sense that that would be the place that they would it would already be there for the teleporting, but like John said, they can maybe jerry rig it to send out a signal to prevent the keepers from going about their doomsday activation or whatever.
Gotcha. I will definitely read more about that. To move our conversation forward, though, like in the game, whenever the tank teleports and like shoots out, I thought that was super cool. First of all, just blasting through space in a tank, but then also it like has a wreck, is destroyed at that point, and I'm just thinking to myself, come on, I've jumped off of like way crazier jumps, just falling off of mountains than that. Come on, I mean not really, but it was. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, sure, whatever. Um, yeah, we can
I
move
thought
forward
about it. I
now.
was like, well, I kind of thought about it too, but maybe it was going technically like way faster than light, kind of like,
Oh yeah, no, it makes sense. It was just a
but at
funny
the
thought.
same time, though, like you would probably be like eviscerated on the inside, you know, like your seatbelt would have cut you in half or something, you know.
And we're
No, no,
talking
no.
about
So
That's the
this.
Mass Effect. It's the Mass
the Mass
Effect. It's
Effect.
fine.
So after we crashed the Mako, we begin to make our ways towards the council chambers, which is where essentially this central control unit is. It's what overrides the conduit. Um, what's going to allow the Reapers to invade and back into the galaxy. We're going up an elevator, and we end up with this awesome action sequence where we have to go out of the elevator and spacewalk on the wards, or of the wards are really the legs of the Citadel. So we're kind of defying gravity with our magnetic boots and have some really, really cool action sequences here. What are
Mhm.
probably, as far as I can remember, my favorite action sequences in the game. It felt like a really cool movie moment, kind
I'd
of
agree.
running, almost, you're not upside down, you feel right side up, but, everything is kind of topsy turvy. And it's fun, like shooting, the gaff and watching them kind of like float off into, the zero G's. What you got, John?
An important part that we kind of just glanced over here. While we are being teleported, we're actually cut into a scene of the Geth ships coming in, as well as Sovereign, correct? and
Yeah.
they are trying to evacuate the council in a very large ship, as well as the naval fleets that are nearby the citadel are engaging in combat with these guest ships, and they attempt to shut the citadel because all of the arms of the citadel will close in on itself to protect the citadel. Unfortunately, they are unable to do so, and they try to stop Saren's ship from getting inside, but that is just not possible. And it plants itself in the heart of the Citadel.
Mhm.
And so that's what's causing all the problems and the explosions and the Geth coming in and attacking the Citadel, is that they're actually able to get inside and get past the defenses that were set up. And then not all of the armies are here because they weren't expecting this attack. And so just the crews and the ships that are here are trying to defend while waiting on reinforcements.
Mhm. So we have our moment where we spacewalk, and there's some cool explosions, whatnot happening in the sky. Well, Citadel's fleet tries to fight off uh, Sovereign, but Sovereign's just pretty much boom, boom, zooming them down with some great, awesome light show effects. Um, we
It's a really cool
eventually,
set piece, like just all
it's
the
awesome.
action that's happening, and you're shooting Geth, but you're also there's like more variety in this action sequence than I'd say the rest of the game because you can like
Mhm.
activate turrets. There's more variety in like the landscape in regards to like how you like want to hide and approach the situations. It was a really good just like final run.
Well, it's awesome watching. So initially, way in the distance is Sovereign. You can just see him. He's not small by any means because he's literally over like a mile long, but he's relatively small compared to the rest of what you're seeing. And you make your way closer and closer and closer until eventually you're right there on him while he's going pew pew shooting at people,
Hmm.
and then you actually go like underneath massive legs, kind of like touch down at different spots. That's when I was like actually like, wow, this is so cool. Like I don't remember this from last time because it's not just running and gunning, but I felt like I actually had a goal, even though a lot of the terrain was very similar looking. It wasn't as
Hmm.
varied as some of the other maps, not as pretty, but it felt like such a unique fight. Like you said, there's a lot of variety in this as far as how you approach the situations, and just seeing Sovereign kind of loom over everything, and you can't run away. You're having to actively run to him to confront Saren was really
Right.
cool.
And then, like you said, he's in the background the whole time, and you can see the extensions of the ship just moving around on top of the main district you're in. And I just wanted to say, in these scenes, I very much likened his ship to a mechanical squid, just because it wrapped
Mhm.
itself around the center, and then you can see its tentacles just moving across, back and forth across the heart of the citadel. And I just really thought it was just a giant mechanical squid, and I thought it was great.
Yeah, it reminded me of like kind of a beetle kind of thing,
Yeah,
like some kind
Mhm.
of bug vibes.
It's
beetle squid.
Best animal.
I don't want to touch on this too long either, but it's really cool because I just thought about there's actually another planet that you can go read the description on where there is a Leviathan, is the way it's described,
Hmm.
and it's this massive, like deformed ship that is kind of, I think it even says like maybe synthetic, kind of in the shape of like a squid or something like that, and it was there and then just disappeared. And the Batarians were like, "Nah, we didn't take it. Don't know what's
Did
happening."
I
Yeah, it
cracked the
never
lore?
existed. They're saying it never existed.
Yeah, and so you're left
Cracked the
with
lore, guys.
thinking, yeah, you're like, well, was it a Reaper? And if it was a Reaper, did it fly off on its own, or did the Batarians take it? Was it like a derelict? Was it killed in a previous war? Did they actually take this one down? There's, like I said, there's a lot of cool little pieces like that that aren't necessary at all, but add to this. For me, this looming feeling. If I was actually Shepard, I'd be like, man, there's too many dots that connect, and I'm not comfortable with it. Um, but we finish our bum rush. Our little spacewalk here, and confront Saren in the council chamber. Uh, at this point, we are left with a fun conversation with him where kind of have this verbal standoff, and you can talk him down or try to talk him down and convince him that what he's doing is crazy. He shouldn't be doing this. Or you can just say screw it and try to fight him anyway. Uh, I'm guessing, based on what's happened up to this point, that both of you guys tried to talk him down. Is that correct?
I did.
Okay. Did you successfully talk him down? I think there's like 3 different times you have to pass skill checks.
I mean, define successful. He was like, you know what, Shepard, you're right, and then he blew his brains out. If that's successful, then I was very successful.
So, I mean,
I was also
the
successful
successful, you're successful in convincing him
not to fight you.
that what he's doing is wrong.
Yeah.
You're trying to convince him, like, no, you're like indoctrinated, as noble as your intentions might have been. Look where we're at, right? Like, look outside the window.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I
and
seen that in a different light. I thought it was you giving him that moment of clarity. He realized it is controlling me, and I'm going to end this, so you don't have to. That's what how I
Well,
seen that scene.
it's the same as the guy from Pharos, the leader of the colony that was being controlled by the Thorian, who shows up and he's like, "Hey Shepard, I'm gonna kill you," and you're like, "No, don't." And then you talk to him, you talk him down, but he's like, I can't control myself enough to help you, but I can at least eliminate myself as a threat. And that was my like interpretation of what Saren was doing. He's like, Shepard is the only way to help. I can't stay alive and be useful, so I need to like take myself out of the equation.
I
and,
seen it in
and
the matriarch Asari's section where she finally was able to fight him off in her head for a moment and got that moment of clarity, and that's what he chose to do. That was his only option.
I think those are both like correct
They're both correct, yeah.
interpretations of kind of what happened here. And I brought up the fact that the noble intentions part because I think he's a very sympathetic villain because ultimately, I mean, if you talk through his dialogue options on Vermeer, uh, you kind of figure out that he wasn't just brainwashed outright. Like he was approached by Sovereign. Sovereign was going to use him as a vessel because he's extremely powerful politically, can
Mm.
kind of do what he wants as far as he can go shoot someone in the face and just kind of shrug it off. And so that's why he was used. But it's really interesting because he was so sure of himself and wanted to ultimately be a not out of some like pride or like ambition, but he wanted to be a savior for the galaxy. That he agrees to team up with Sovereign, but believing that he can save people rather than be a tool for Sovereign. And this is, of course, where the indoctrination part comes in. He's a very tragic person. I mean, I'm not saying he's a hero at all, but he's a very tragic villain because his intentions ultimately were noble, and he was a tool from the beginning, and he just eventually couldn't even couldn't recognize it himself. And there's also the interesting moment on Vermeer where you talk to the scientist who's like, yeah, he's afraid he's being indoctrinated.
Mm.
And that's kind of what you do here is you convince him like, Sarah, no, you have been indoctrinated. And that's why he kills himself, kind of eliminating himself from the equation so that you don't have to fight him. And because there is such this brief moment of lucidity, he knows it's going to probably come back. Very sad moment. He kills himself and falls to his resting place on a little, I guess, courtyard underneath you, underneath the council chambers. You're then greeted by a cutscene where the Destiny Ascension, which is essentially the council ship, is under heavy fire from Geth right now. Um, they are trying to make an escape, but are just being so overwhelmed by the Geth forces at this point that they're just not going to make it out. Joker calls you and says, "Hey, Commander, we're on our way. We are sitting right outside of this mass relay. We can be there now. You just have to give the word. I'm here with this massive human fleet. I don't think it's the Fifth Fleet, but it's some nearby fleet, and you're left with a choice to either send Joker and the cavalry in, and humanity will come to save the day, or you tell them to hold off and wait because we need as many ships as possible for Sovereign." Um, what did you pick, John?
I picked for them to go ahead and move in, attempt to save the council, and go ahead and fight.
How about you, Kurt?
I want to go last.
Okay. I also picked to save the council.
This is not a wrong decision,
I
Kurt. What did you
I
choose?
I saw the potential harbinger of the devastation of all life in the universe as a larger threat than the politicians dying. And I wanted to save them, but it seemed more pertinent to focus all fire on Sovereign, because it really seemed like it was going to take everything that we had. So, yeah, I had a real sad cutscene where
Well,
everybody died, and I felt bad about it.
I'm interested to know how this changes your story. So,
So actually,
Yeah,
I did what Kurt did the first time. I let the council die. Um, there are, in fact, repercussions for this, so
yeah,
prepare
and
yourself.
yeah, we can talk about this final boss fight before we get into that because I think that might be more
Yeah,
appropriate. But
yeah,
yeah, there are some
sure.
repercussions that I have some opinions on.
So with this, it's a tough choice one way or the other. There's the one side that's, I should let the council die, not because I want them to die. Well, maybe, or you know, the bigger thing is, again, focusing the guns on Sovereign, and I get that, and that's what I did the first time. My justification was we need every gun on Sovereign.
Hmm.
Maybe we can take him with less, but we don't know his firepower, and up until this point, he's been proven to be something just so far out of our understanding the technology used to create him, that we need as much as we can. This
Yeah.
time I had the benefit of playing this series before, and there's not really a right choice here, but I chose the other option. And I don't know if John, you chose it for this reason, or if you had any
I
underlying
can tell
reason, or
you
maybe.
why I chose it then before you get into it.
Um, yeah, I'll let you choose or tell why you did it, and I'll tell why I did it if it
That
varies
way
any.
you got no extra opinion. Just strictly why I did it. So basically, I thought that basically my perception of humanity is they're trying to put their best foot forward, and they would ultimately see this as an opportunity to help out and not be self-centered and show that they can help out the other races, because they're, from what I can tell right now, the only people fighting to help the Citadel right now are non-humans. And personally, I feel that humanity would not just stand by and let something like that happen. They would jump in, guns blazing, literally, to help anyone that needed it. And that was my perception of humanity. And I was like, well, I'm gonna go with what I think humanity would do, and humanity would jump in, no matter the cost, because ultimately it's not just their lives on the line. And that's how I thought humanity would perceive this decision, and so I went with that.
And honestly, my reasoning, I mean, I said it a second ago, but it sounds exactly the same in my head. I like humanity, like Shepherd is there to serve all races, and the best course of action would be to stop the Reaper regardless of the cost. Obviously the cost is politicians that are not human, but it didn't come to mind as like, well, I don't want to save the aliens. I want all the humans to survive. It was just that more lives potentially are going to be saved if we take out this Reaper.
Yeah,
Mhm.
see, so that's interesting because I didn't really take the lives of the council members into consideration for this decision. My decision was based on the fact that the armies that were already there were non-human and they were taking heavy casualties before their reinforcements from humanity showed up. So that's an interesting look at it. Something that I didn't think about, or I'd had an extra thought into that, I guess, in a different
And al-
way, I would say.
and also maybe I'm kind of dumb. I didn't realize that the alliance was specifically all human. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't realize that specifically. So when Joker was like, "I'm here with the Alliance fleet. Do you want us to go in?" My mind wasn't, "Oh, these are all the humans. What is humanity going to do in this moment?" It was, "What are the people under my command going to do?" And I thought, as a high-ranking member of the military, and I just didn't know that the Alliance was all like only humans. I thought it involved like cross-species cooperation.
I mean, it
Should have
makes
read the
sense with the
codex.
name, the
I
Alliance.
mean, I did, but that was 30 hours ago,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of codex entries. So
Well,
But yeah, I
like I said, it makes sense with the name too. Alliance, you think it's a bunch of people together.
exactly. It's not just. I mean, I did remember some codex stuff. It talks about it. It's like all the nations
Mhm.
and stuff like forming an alliance like of people. But Ryder, I know
Just
you're.
remember, like Citadel space and Alliance is like that's how I have to
Yeah,
like distinguish. Is you have Citadel and Alliance.
yeah.
They overlap but aren't the same.
I realize that now, and I kind of wanted to like reload, but I was like, no, this is like a big decision. I think I made the right decision because I know that you're trying to talk about this, Ryder. I assume that if you choose to save the council, then Sovereign gets blown up anyway, and it doesn't really matter. But without having that foresight or that knowledge ahead of time, I didn't know what the actual consequences were going to be, but
Well, I'm
you
glad
can
you
tell me
made that
what
decision.
happens.
I like the variety. I mean, like I said, I made that decision the first time. There's no right or wrong decision here in the games from the perspective of a player.
Mhm,
You're going to have people tell you otherwise. But I also don't want to say like, oh, it doesn't matter because it does matter because Sovereign is ultimately defeated. But for John and I, we have massive, massive human casualties,
mhm,
um, and that might not affect us now immediately, but maybe 2 games from now, there's going to be we're still recovering from the loss of 10 dreadnoughts and literally 40,000 well trained troops or whatever, however many it is. And from your perspective, you also have to deal with the backlash of being the first human Spectre, and you're supposed to be this bastion for humanity and represent the best ideals, and you've let other aliens die. And this is where I'm not saying one is right or more right or wrong than the other. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, well, can I jump ahead to like the end, or do we want to talk about the boss fight real fast?
Let
Because
me.
I have something like the aliens' reactions to what I did is something that I definitely want to talk about, but we can have to jump
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So let me wrap up my portion,
Yeah, go ahead.
um, real quick, and then we can we'll put a pin in it. I think just because
Yeah.
we do want to have stuff left over. So um, from my perspective, kind of like what John was saying, humans in my mind would help. Joker's at the ready. They're just waiting for the order. That's the only thing keeping them from going. It's just they need the official go. And they didn't hesitate to jump into the fray when I told them to. This is reminiscent of like things in actual human history that you can reference it by. You can look at like World War II. This is the galactic equivalent of the beaches of Normandy, of people storming together to face a greater issue, to free uh, these oppressed peoples, people who are in danger. You look at it as something a little more recent, controversial now, but the United States and 9/11, how countries, for good or bad, rush to our aid and both feet forward into Iraq. And I think it's actually like a good comparison because even though you can look at that today and be like, well, maybe that was a rash decision, I think at the core of humanity, we are social people and we care about the welfare of others. And when like push comes to shove, we are more than willing to shove for our people for something a part of a greater cause. Um, and maybe that's just some like American like mumbo jumbo stuff, but I think that ultimately is true for humanity as a whole. I think on a galactic scale, do this. The other part of it is I was thinking about the again widespread, long-lasting effects because even though the short game it might have proved risky for us to um, not have the humans attack Harvard, Sovereign directly. The long game, and this is the benefit of me having played these games before. The long game tells me that we should try to preserve and nurture relationships with the other races, because I ultimately want them to see humanity in a positive light so they are more willing to work with us. And knowing that if I were to leave the council races to die, then they would look at me as shepherd and humanity as a whole as like well, you're kind of late to the battle. There's in Game of Thrones the late Walder Frey, even though he showed up at the very end of the battle was won. It doesn't look very good at that point, and if you show up after, there's already been massive casualties. Um, and I don't want to cut you off from this, Kurt, but I do just want to wrap up the end.
Go
We
ahead.
don't have much left from this point. So after we make this major decision, um, we can send one of our team members down to go and make sure that Saren is dead. In my game, I don't know what happened for you guys, but I had Garrus and Rex with me, and Rex goes down to check on Saren and puts another bullet through his head, and it was
Yeah.
really like funny watching it. Did Garrus do that? I'm assuming in yours.
Yeah, Garrus and Tally went down, and Garrus took the double tapped.
Double tap, yeah.
Yeah.
So the double tap seems like it worked, and then we end up with this super crazy. I'm trying to think of the correct word to describe it. I don't know. Just kind of scary and gross.
It's a
Saren,
fast zombie.
yeah, he turns into a fast
Transmutation.
zombie.
There you go.
Yeah, sure. He he stands up and kind of grows his, you know, crazy, nasty looking Reaper
He
parts, and
contorts into a Reaper hybrid.
he yeah, it's kind of interesting. He has like multiple moves that I've seen the Geth use that he uses
Mm-hmm.
like different couple ones, and it's nice seeing them like all mixed together. This wasn't a particularly hard boss fight, but it is interesting, and it's something that's teased before. I didn't have to fight him. Neither of you had to fight him because we were able to talk him down, and he killed himself. But he tells you that, I was doubting, and Sovereign made me see the truth, and now I am perfectly enhanced, blah blah blah. And so,
I
you
have
could take that as like
implants.
exactly. You
Yeah, he
take
said
it
he got
as
an
like,
implant.
oh, you're just like very much now indoctrinated. You're not going to fight it. But really, he, I guess, completely rewired his nervous system to make him into like a Reaper synthetic thingy on the inside, like the previous husk that we've seen. We've only seen them on humans though, so this is a almost terrifying twist to see this on Saren. Um, we have a short boss fight, at least for me, with him. I didn't really have too much trouble. Did you guys have trouble with this? What do you think about it? Just general. Did you like it, dislike it, or just kind of indifferent?
Yeah.
I didn't have any issues with the boss fight.
You're muted right now, buddy.
I didn't have any issues with the boss fight. I didn't think it was that difficult. Um, that's really. I thought it was fun, but it wasn't that
Were
difficult.
you expecting him to come back from the dead that round two?
Well, I seen his body fall, and I was like, oh, it's right there. I have a feeling this is gonna come up again.
The camera lingered a little too long
Right?
for,
Yeah.
for it to not come back.
I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I feel like it's gonna come back, but I didn't know how. And the way it did it, I was like, oh, well, that's pretty crazy. I didn't expect that.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Kurt?
So I didn't have too much trouble with this boss fight. It was pretty straightforward. I again appreciate Mass Effect for not having just bullet spongy boss fights like a lot of shooters do. I thought it was like reasonably paced, and the extra reinforcements coming in gave it some variety besides just point and shoot. This isn't a complaint so much as
It's not like a complaint, I guess. I was really excited whenever
I was able to talk Saren down without a fight initially. And I was like, wow. So I just like yes, this game is a shooter, but the important part is the narrative aspects. In my mind, that's what I care about more. And so it's really cool that I was basically at the very end. They were like, "Oh, do you want to do?"
And you cut out.
Gone again.
I'm so sorry, I don't know what's going on. I'm using my crappy microphone now. Um, I thought it was really cool that they were going to give you the opportunity to use like dialogue options to talk your way out of a boss fight instead of just focusing on combat for a final boss, just like every single other game. So I wasn't disappointed that a new boss showed up. I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's not, in my mind, it's not that cool after all. But yeah, the boss fight itself was totally fine.
So after a very inoffensive boss fight, we finally finish off Saren, and we watch as Joker in the Normandy kind of puts the killing blow on Sovereign. Goodness, I almost called him Saren. Uh, really cool, awesome, epic moment. Joker kind of swoops down and blows him to pieces like a Han Solo Death Star type swoop out
Hmm.
of nowhere. Um,
I was worried he was gonna like crash the Normandy into it at first, because that's kind of like what they set
he's
up, and
too
I was like,
good.
thank.
That would be very
Well, I
anticlimactic.
mean, I thought he was just. Well, I don't know. For me, it was like because my choice was like no, like go after Saren. And so you see all the ships go by the Ascension, and it's just getting blown to bits, and they're like. There's a scene where there are some Asari on the Ascension that are like, "Hey, Alliance fleet, like come in." And then they turn. It like
Whoa.
cuts to Joker for a split second, and then it cuts back to the Ascension, and the Asari are like, they've closed the line, like they've cut off communications. Yeah, exactly.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, it's rough. And so you see Joker more in the fight, and he's like shooting and blasting and everything. And then at the very end, he's like, "All right, everybody, hold on, we're going in for one last hit." And I was like, and he like swoops back up and points like directly at it. I was like, I will literally cry right now if like Joker and everybody on that ship
Like
dies.
swats him out of the way.
But yeah, they just shoot out like a Star Fox bomb, and Sovereign blows up, and it's fine. But I was really worried about it for a second.
Well, after this, uh, Sovereign is essentially defeated and kind of lifelessly begins to fall apart. And I believe a leg or a portion, like a leg segment or something like that, starts kind of falling toward us, and we can see it falling towards the council chamber. Um, and everyone runs and hides, and it crashes through. We're met with kind of I guess, a fade out, fade in. They're trying to find the remains of whoever is left. Um, they end up finding your remaining crew members, and there's this sad moment of like, oh no, Shepard, he must really be gone. Uh,
But we know better. We know
we
there's
know
two
better.
more games.
I hate that, I even when I played this 10 years ago, I knew that there were two more games. So as I was playing it, I was like, okay, but he's not going to be dead. I've seen him on the cover of the other two games. At the very least, I know that he's going to be around. Um,
Yeah, not
that kind
every
of
story
sucks.
has to end with a fake out death. It becomes ineffective at a point.
It To be kind of fair, they've set this game up for a series, trilogy, whatever it may be, at least a sequel. But given the fact that this released and potentially might have been a standalone game before it was met with the widespread critical and commercial success that it was met with, it doesn't hurt my feelings that this 14-year-old game at this point decided to do a fake out death.
Yeah, it's
um,
fine.
it is almost a little goofy, but at the same time it was just the perfect amount of campy, and I was like like as like the music kind of like peaks and Shepard steps out all like gallant and like, I am the
I'm a hero.
savior of everyone. Yeah, except for Kurt, who's a murderer. So
Save the galaxy.
after this, we have like another fade out, fade in, and we're talking to, for John and I, the
The counts.
council, the original council, the undead. Wait, not undead. The not dead
Non-dead.
council. Um, and they kind of thank us for what we've done. Humanity is a real player. You've done your best. You've put the galaxy forward instead of just humanity's interest, and we're going to give you the opportunity to choose a. Uh, we're at first we're going to offer humanity councilship, uh, and second we're going to offer you, Shepard, the opportunity to choose who's going to
Directors.
be,
Hmm.
yeah, who's going to be the human counselor. And before I get to that part, Kurt, what did you see on your end since you were an evil person?
So since I decided to save the universe instead of save three politicians,
There was actually, I'm sorry. I thought that there's like three people in like a small crew. Apparently, that's the biggest ship in Citadel space, and so
so
there's
Apparently,
look,
it's
like
an important ship.
thousands and thousands of people on there,
I
and I
was
didn't
not
know
fed
that.
enough information to make this decision.
It's apparently in like a codex entry that you have to get, like you have to like go to the perfect like spot and like look out a window or something, and then you have to go and read it. but apparently there's a few thousand people on that ship. So, and they're civilians
It
primarily.
it feels terrible. The other decision probably was more moral, but with the fate of all life in the universe in the balance, I think that my shepherd made a logical decision, and I think he's gonna have to live with that, and it'll be okay. But so mine fades in, and it's just Ambassador Udina and Captain Anderson, like just the two of them talking. And this is the part that I didn't like, because in my mind it was like, again, I didn't realize that the Alliance was entirely human. So in my
Mhm.
mind, it was like, no, I'm in control, or I'm giving command to all these people. Yes, I'm representing humanity, but it's bigger than that right now. We need to take out this thing that's threatening all life. So for me, it fades in, and it's just Ambassador Udina and Captain Anderson standing there, and they're talking about politics. And it's sad that the rest of the council members are gone. But when I start talking to Udina, he says, everyone's really impressed by what you did, Shepard. You saved everyone. You've done humanity, like you've proven humanity, and now it's humanity's turn to lead, and we need someone to like replace the council basically, and it's time for humans to be in charge. Um, and I didn't like that one bit because I was like, no, I didn't make this decision to win gain for the humans. I made the decision to stop sovereign to try to save all life, and so I don't like that the repercussions apparently are only improving the position of humans, of like the human race. And again, I didn't realize that the Alliance was an entirely human uh, uh, group at this point. But yeah, so Adina's like, so who do you think should be like the human representative on the new council that we're forming? Should it be me, or should it be that guy? And I was like, it should be that guy because Captain Anderson did not betray me and isn't a terrible person. And then Captain Anderson, he says something along the lines of, you know, sure, I'll do it. And that's kind of how mine ends. And then Shepard just kind of walks away. And surprisingly, Udina didn't like throw a fit about it. He took it pretty well, all things considered. But
Wow.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I honestly hate that.
Yeah, it felt really cheap.
There's no
That's
way that that would actually. I'm just trying to fathom, like, oh, they came in and saved the day, but now they think they should take over?
Well, it's not that like they should be solely in charge, but this is I keep saying his name differently, but I'm gonna say Udina speaking. Um, saying like all the other races are really impressed, so they want
You to head the
you
council.
to they want you to choose a human to represent the council now. And so the language made me assume that there would be other people added to the council, but that humans were in charge of selecting the first and selecting the person that would be like the most in charge, I
No,
guess.
I don't like that at all. I'm glad. I'm
Yeah.
glad that the regular route didn't do that.
that's one thing that really frustrated me the first time I played through it because the game makes the assumption that you are putting humans first rather than
Mm,
thinking about it from like a strategic standpoint. Because I also thought about it. I didn't realize that the Destiny Ascension had thousands of civilians on it that might have maybe influenced my decision. But the bigger thing was the way that the game poses it to you is we're going to focus all our fire. We need to save, our reinforcements to focus all their fire on Sovereign.
mm.
The game doesn't pose it as like a screw you aliens, we're gonna hold off and not help you. And
Nor does it pose it as a this will bring glory to humanity, so we should do this.
yeah, exactly. It's not like a human centric action. I don't know if I knew at that point that the alliance was entirely human or not, but I was doing it with the strategic, point of view, not from the human centric point of view. I wasn't trying to keep more humans alive or
Mm.
or let the council die. I was just purely thinking from a number standpoint. We need to save our guns until we need them at the last second. So
It
that
was
that
a
is a frustrating moment.
it was a military decision, not a political one.
Hmm.
So, but I assume with you guys that the rest of the council's there, and they're like, it's time to add a fourth. Pick one of these two people.
Yeah, pretty much.
Who'd you
Um,
pick?
Anderson, obviously.
Yeah.
John's like
John.
Udina.
So
Udina's the good.
I picked Anderson, and then
Oh
Udina
man.
Udina says something about you would pick him. He's
And
like
he's like, really?
he thinks with his fists, and he says Only to you, Udina.
Yeah,
And then,
There's like a
that's
good
weird.
line like that too.
okay, so after this line, I just want you to imagine how you would feel when your game crashes, and then you have to get back in your game, and you are immediately at the final boss fight again, at the beginning of it. And imagine how much
Yeah.
immersion that took away from you.
It's
Because that's what
something that
happened
like
to me, and it made me sad.
that's maybe like 5 to 10 minutes of total playtime. So it's not like, oh, I'm having to redo a whole lot. It's just that you're right at the end of the story
Mhm.
and
That's when it
it's
broke.
a slap in the face.
Lit-
Yeah. Like you said, the
literally,
immersion.
I'm not gonna get into the story or anything, but literally there are like maybe 5 lines of dialogue left in the game, and that's when it decides it's like, oh, he wants to do that again. Anyway, go ahead.
Very good.
That's rough. My game crashed during the boss fight, and then I had to reload it, and it just
Really?
started me right where I left off. So yeah, I've heard that's kind of a bug. Is that at least one of the center boss fights is kind of notorious right now for crashing, but it wasn't as it didn't hurt as much because I didn't lose any progress.
Yeah, I'm not playing on a peasant console.
That's what the
So
P stands for.
yeah. I don't think I had a
PC, peasant
single
console. Yeah.
crash.
Oh.
Maybe. I don't think so. So
It were your
with
words.
no, 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 no. With this decision, we are placing kind of the future of the galaxy in either Udina's or Anderson's hands. We all chose Anderson. Um, this is I don't know. I'm not going to say there's a right or a wrong choice because you can role play how you want to role play. But I mean, the game also. This is another one of those points where I'm like, I don't really like the way it's being framed because they're like, do you want Udina, who only supports himself and is power hungry? Or do you want Anderson, who has always believed you and is a good guy at heart? And it's like, well, why would I ever choose Udina?
And
Like,
see, this was another issue that I had too, because I personally don't feel like, somebody in the military should be in this position. You're supposed to think of humanity's interests, but I honestly think somebody in the military is going to have a militaristic ideology when they come into a position like this. So honestly, I don't think Udina is right for the position, and I don't think because of like a full military career centric person should be in this position either. So I honestly wanted another choice that was not one of these two, but that wasn't really an option. So
I
so
would like to nominate Caden to be in charge of this now.
my head hurts.
It's the only other human. Huh? It's like the only other important. Well, there's like Presley and Chakra
Yep.
and all that and stuff. No, Liara is the
Presley.
one that's like, "Oh no, my head hurts," and then she's like, "I'm gonna end this important cutscene early now." Anyway.
anyway, that was my
So
feelings on that, but I chose Anderson because I liked him better than the other guy, even though I didn't think it was a good idea for him to do it either.
I think that given the circumstances, now this is where I don't know if it's in the codex or what. I don't know if an appointment to the council is like a, Supreme Court appointment where like, you serve for life, or if, it's like a term thing where after like 10 years or 5 years, you'll be removed. Um, if it's for life, that's a little kind of scary because Solarians live for like 40 years max versus Asari lived for like at least 1,000. So that's
Mm.
kind of like I don't know if they should have that long of standing of power.
Especially that
But
quick of a judgment on who gets to be on the council,
and so
assuming he gets to.
with Anderson, I don't know if it's life or like I said, or just a few years, but my thought process is actually the opposite of yours, John, where like I would prefer a military minded person because the council has not listened multiple times and I need someone who's going to be in my corner is my thought process. And I know that Anderson is the only person in this game who has been in my corner consistently. And he's kind of like I'm thinking of him as like a Winston Churchill kind of character, like during World War II in the UK, where he was elected again and again and again as prime minister. But after the war was over, they were like, "Get out of here!" Like he was extremely problematic, had like numerous like issues, was a drunk, like get belligerent, had tons of like other just unsavory political views. but ultimately was a military-minded person, and I don't think you could have had a proper like ally victory without someone like him in World War II. So I'm thinking of it the same way with Anderson, where like he is going to offer that perspective in a way that the other council members, because for us we have the same council that we did. You know, Kurt might end up with a new council, but we are going to have the exact same three people who did not want to listen and stonewall us. And I didn't play with the council living last time, but just knowing how they've been up until this point, I cannot see any other way of this turning out other than them being like,
But
Shepard, thank you for your service. But we don't really think that that's going to be an issue. So,
But I see a problem here as well. The fact that they have so much history, like no matter what decision Captain Anderson's gonna make, the other council members are gonna go, "You're only agreeing with him because you used to be together on a same ship, and you
That's
think
why you
every
get rid of the
decision
other
he
council
makes is gonna
members.
be perfect." And also, you're both human. You're automatically gonna say that he's making the perfect decisions. So I can already see that's how that's gonna happen in the future. Does it? I have no idea.
yeah.
I've never played any of these other games.
No, I
So.
mean, no, you're probably right. I mean, I don't think it's going to, either way. I mean, the whole purpose of this
Mhm.
game and like the narrative structure is to frustrate you one way or the other. Where I'm not going to say illusion of choice, but
Right.
you're going to get Kurt's going to have a whole nother set of like frustrations and complications because of what he did. And we're going to have our own where we might have a few things easier, but we might have other things that are much more frustrating because we left the same group alive.
And Captain Anderson are going to save the universe. I don't know what you're talking about. It's going to be fine.
I hope you do.
He says he's gonna
Um,
kill the next set of council members too.
It
so that
has to
brings
be
us
done.
to really the end of the game and the last little bit. I don't remember what happens, honestly, other than we kind of walk away. I know there's supposed to be some epic moment, but it didn't really stick with me, so that kind of sucks. I just know that for our playthrough, John, that Shepard is like, I'm the face of humanity. Man, my head looks so much bigger right now because I'm like, there, there we go. It's a little better. Um,
Does it just
but I
say
know
he's gonna
Shepard,
continue to do the Geth and then try to figure out more on the Reapers as well?
something like that. Him,
Hmm.
it's to the effect of him being like, my work isn't
Yep.
done. Because I think what the council is essentially like, well, thanks for what you did. Glad to know that we've taken care of the Reapers. And I think that like Shepard's like,
No,
nah, we're
you
not even
got
close,
one.
and then walks away.
Anderson and Udina aren't like that. They're like, all right, now let's figure out what we're gonna do next, because we're like just getting started, basically. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering that. And then the credits happen, and it's a really bad song.
Are you kidding?
It made it feel. Oh, I didn't think
You
this was gonna be
triggered.
controversial.
You
No.
triggered him. How dare you?
It took me out of it completely because it didn't feel to me it didn't match the tone of anything that had happened before, like in the entire game before. Like the synth instruments are still there, but just like the style and the vocals, I was like, what is going on? I'm not commenting on the lyrics. I'm not saying that it is a bad song, but the credits started rolling. I was like, this feels like the ending to sort of like a pop sci-fi film rather than just like an epic conclusion to this 30-hour odyssey that I just like wrapped up. And again, I'm not trying to yuck your yum, Ryder. You can like it. I didn't think it fits what had just happened.
So I actually wrote in my notes that this is like probably like my favorite video game like ending music like ever. Like the end credits was like my favorite part because of this song.
I
Like
wrote
this
I wrote I don't like this song.
So we're on complete opposite ends here. I absolutely love this, and I love this for like a couple of reasons because I felt like it fit super, super well. As far as like the instrumentation to me was like perfect. The like you said, like the
That was
synths
fine.
like work really well. To me, like the backing track, it wasn't written for this game. This actually was written as a part of like their album that released in like 2006. I looked this up like prior to recording, and it just the creators felt that it matched what they were going for well
Mm.
enough. They wanted it to be the end credits music, and I actually liked it because it felt like a movie to me. Because that's the way I kind of looked at this is I'm playing a movie rather than a video game. So when this started at the end, um, I don't know how I felt about it the first time, but this time I was actually really digging it. And I know that there were like no lyrics or anything like the previous songs, but again, this felt like the end of like an epic movie to me. And like the way that he like in our game, the council's like, well, thanks for what you did. See you later. And he's like, my job's not done. And then him walking away and like that song starting, and it's like an 8.5 minute song. I was like, yes, like it felt like the end of something and the beginning of something much bigger to me. The song did. So I really liked it for that reason. I think the general consensus is that it's a good ending because I think that the band actually was a fairly like unknown band up until this point. They like performed like smaller like venues, but this actually pushed them to like yeah. It says they gained a sizable new audience due to its exposure of fonts, moody and subdued melodies. It goes a little bit further talking about it, but apparently they like doubled their fan base just from this. So
All right.
Good for
it's
them.
generally well received, but you're allowed to not like the song.
Okay, so now let me just jump in with this disclaimer.
Sounds
These
like I
are
didn't even notice there was music playing.
these
I was
are
doing laundry.
these are heavily music inclined people right here. All of you may not know it, but I do. And so I'm going to give you the opinion of the average person that played this game. There was music. It was good.
It
That's
was
it.
good. He said it was good. That's all that
It
mattered.
Well, I mean,
was
they could have put any song there and I would have told you it was
no.
good
Oh no.
because
It was.
I
But I'm
don't
sorry, John.
have a backing on a lot of music when it comes to thinking about how it interacts with different things. I can just generally say, you know, this music just went well. It sounds
Mm.
good. I'm not going to think, okay, well, how did this melody interact with how the feelings of the former conversation made me feel? These may be things that, like, instinctively you two have that you know, in the back of your mind, just from your music backgrounds. As someone that's never played an instrument, never thought about stuff like that, I can tell you, music good. That's all I got. So,
um, yeah, I mean, I'm
anyway,
definitely being nitpicky, and I recognize that. Like, it was fine. It just to comment, Ryder, you was like, I like you liked that it felt like a movie. I don't have a problem that the music made it feel like a movie, but there's different kind of movie credit music. There's the end of something like A New Hope, where you have like the throne room scene, and it just goes into like this awesome bombastic music that really carries the feeling of what you just watched. And then there's something like The Greatest Showman, which is I like that musical a lot. I know you have different opinions, Ryder. But I think it's a good musical. I think it has a certain tone. It's very theatrical. But then the credits start, and it's a pop arrangement of one of the best songs in the musical. And that pop arrangement is terrible, and it's just a worse version of a song we've already heard, and it just does not match the tone of what we just watched at all because the music in that movie is not generally like poppy. And so that was my problem with it. It's not that the song is bad. It's not that I think people who like it are wrong. I just personally was like, this feels weird. It just feels like we took like a left turn with the credits music, and then the credit music stops. There's like 6 more minutes of credits, and I was just listening to it, kind of looking up, kind of on my phone, and I was just like, "What's happened?" And I just kept looking at the screen, and there was just no waiting for like the title theme or something slow to like swell in, like it always does when the big song finishes in credits, and there was just nothing there.
yes.
So
So, hold on one second. Hold on.
go ahead. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you for confirming my point, Kurt. See, I've watched The Greatest Showman, and I did the same thing at the end of it. Okay, more music, music good. All right, the end. See,
Bad arrangement.
hold on. I'm
Just
just gonna
bad
say,
movie.
average
So.
person
Good movie.
doesn't take that into account. So, anyway,
And that is
y'all go
true
ahead.
because
John,
a little.
oh,
Oh, you go ahead. Go ahead.
John, I thought you were gonna say, "Let me just prove the point." I didn't even notice that the song. You're like, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Ryder.
That would have
No,
been awesome.
to that point specifically about like your average person like probably not going to notice or care that much. That's very true. And just Kurt and I are on different ends of the spectrum, probably because we do care about this a lot. It's a big part of our lives, music in general. But I think of the Marvel movies is a really big example. Like you can't, other than the dun 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 dun, like the like main Avengers theme, you cannot sing any music from the Avengers movies. And there have been like 23, or from the MCU, and there's been like 23 movies. And it's because the music is designed as just kind of like a necessity. It's just kind of there to like be in the very, very, very
Filler.
back of your mind. Yeah, so you don't notice the silence, and that's okay for your average person, but it drives me crazy. And it's actually one of my biggest reasons that I do not want to rewatch those movies, because when the music does come on, I don't find it inoffensive, which is their goal. I actually find it offensive that it's so boring. And I think that I'm not going to say there's merit in that, but I understand why they did it. But like your average person would probably not care, just not notice at all that it's not there, and it's pretty, again, inoffensive as far as music goes. It's not particularly bad. It's just there as a backing track rather than something to convey emotion, which this game I talked about earlier. There's that point where you're driving through the archives where the main theme starts, and it's this like feeling of like wonder and like a new galaxy, just learning new things and seeing new things. And that's how I felt the first time I saw the title screen 10 years ago, and that's how I felt driving through the archives
Yeah,
again,
I didn't notice.
10 years later. So you didn't, but for me, I immediately, like, I knew what song it was, and I remembered it took me back 10 years ago playing this game, and going into the archives and feeling that exact same thing. So just different strokes for different folks, I guess. But
This has been
with
Backlog
the
Crew Music Edition.
music edition, this is all important. It's important to the game, so I don't mind talking about it. And it's my episode, so I will talk about it. But with the music, like I said, it's 8.5 minutes long. I sat through all of it, loved all of it. Kurt didn't, that's fine. But it cuts off and there's nothing afterward. And I thought that was a little odd, and I looked it up, and I thought this is what happened. The credits originally ended on time,
Yeah.
but they added in the DLC afterward, and they added on the DLC credits afterward, like after
Mm,
that. But they
makes
didn't go
sense.
back and add in like new music to like act as filler for the rest of it. Probably because they just didn't want to like score new music just for the credits, and there's nothing that fit as well as the original song did. So they just kind of left that 2.5 minutes of credits blank. Yeah, go ahead, John.
There's DLC in this game?
hmm We all did
Was it
it,
the
probably.
asteroid mission?
Yeah, the asteroid mission.
Oh, with the other guy that was also a part of the crew, like that.
No,
There's the
it was
Batarians,
like
the terrorist.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
it was the only other one that like popped up on your like big map of like, hey, this is a named place.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did that. Okay, I was just you threw me through a loop there. I was like, I don't remember it
Mm.
explicitly being DLC anywhere. So
It very much fits in with the rest. You don't really notice it. It's not like Skyrim where they're like, look at this. Hello, sir. Look at this. Look at this note, please.
that is a great point because not at any other time do I remember seeing those Batarians. Is that the right name?
hmm
I don't remember seeing them any other place but in that mission. It's because it was DLC, right?
hmm
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, while we're talking about the DLC mission, I just want to say one of my favorite like small touches in the game was in on that asteroid. If you go up to the top of like some kind of mountain, there's like a little hut, and if you go inside, it's like start radio transmission, and you're like, yeah, sure, and you start it, and it's just like funky
Bam, bam,
pop
bam, bam,
music.
bam, 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 bam. It's like the like Dragon Ball transition music or something. Is what it sounds like.
And then
I remember
you
letting
like
it play, like walking outside and seeing the corpse while it's playing, and I was like, I had to go turn it back off.
yeah, you like can read through the files, and it's like just some people who are working on that asteroid just decided to start their like own radio station, or radio station was being started, and then their superiors are like, this music is making the young folk rowdy and obnoxious, and you need to stop. And it's like, oh, that's hilarious because that's just exactly what happens now.
Mhm.
And I thought it was just a really like small unnecessary touch.
There's another nice touch in that that if you read the codex entries, the Batarians are hated just like
Mm.
by everyone. And when you go in, like you don't know what's happened, you're just kind of finding these corpses everywhere. And when you go in and have your first interaction with Batarians, Shepard goes, Batarians. like like really, like it's the probably the most emotion we get out of like Mel Shepherd, and like I giggled when it happened because I was like, yeah, Batarians, I hate those
Dingleberg.
guys. Yeah, yeah, it's like
I think it was the
Dingleberg.
same
It's
thing.
essentially the same vibe from that. Um,
Um,
but if anyone has anything else about just before this point, then
Nope.
go ahead, throw it out. DLC, side missions. I think we've covered everything
Music good.
very, very comprehensively. I didn't think this was going to take essentially 3 hours for part two for the last 3 hours of the game. We spent just as much time talking about it as there was actual gameplay. But that's completely fine. I completely love this game. I think it's very much worth replaying in this state. I'm just going to go ahead and move on, I guess, with my recommendation or not
Go for it.
recommendation. So I recently have tried to play on PC the original release of this game from 2007. I can say do not play it. There's not controller support, which is not, a definite no, but it's just even playing with a mouse, it's super, super clunky, and I just could not get into it. About a year before that, I tried replaying it on 360, the again original release from 2007.
It had controller
Still very,
support
very
though.
clunky. It did have controller support, but it was so clunky. And I tried to power through it, but back in 2013, I think I played through it, or 2012, I played through it originally, and it was not even noticeable at that point. And it's just crazy how much progression there's been in the relatively 10 years that there's a lot of older games that I can go back to and ignore the bad graphics or like gameplay that I'm not completely on board with. But it was a chore for me to play that game from 2007. But this, it cleans up a lot of the core gameplay. The graphics look generally really good. Again, I'm playing on PC, so I'm playing with 4K, uh, graphics that have been kind of advertised as a big selling point for this. I loved it. If I'm going to give this like a numeric rating, I'd probably give it like an 8.5 out of 10. I want to give it higher because I love the story, but the biggest thing is just it does feel dated still at some points. They kind of goofed up the Mako by making too many mountains. They corrected the Mako's control issues and then like kind of flipped over the other side of it and messed up the environments that it has to drive in. And it's too big a part of the core gameplay. You probably spend 15 hours at least,
Just
if not
driving.
more, going to these other planets just driving. If you want to get all the little snippets, side missions, and everything else, extra money, weapons, and that's too much of the game for me to just be like, it's okay. I'm going to ignore it. So all of that, I would still give it like an 8.5, just because I absolutely love the characters in the world, and the dialogue and whatnot that's been created. I absolutely would recommend this today, specifically the Legendary Edition. Um, I can't vouch for console versions, but I still think that ultimately, if you're looking to get into it, there's not a better time to get into this series. Either one of you can
Next.
take it. Go ahead.
Um, this game's amazing. Like I absolutely fell in love with this game. It's got combat's fine, but and the driving is a little rough sometimes, but literally everything else about it is near. I hesitate to use this word, but like near perfect for me. I don't know that I'm in a position to like actually give a unbiased number, but I guess I would say like 9.5 for me. I really, really liked it. I would recommend it. It's like as someone who missed it when it first came out and is catching up on it now. It feels a little dated, but it's definitely worth going back to. And I would jump in, and I played on a base PS4, and it was totally fine the whole way through, except for one or two crashes. But yeah,
Great. How about you, John?
I would give it a 9 out of 10. Any game that I go through and beat, usually it gets a high score from me because I dedicate that much of my time to it. I'd say that there's a reason that I enjoy the game. And to go along with that, I would say it has a right amount of combat and story, and it's very surprising when a game actually can give you that right amount. That number's going to differ for everyone, but I felt like it was a good mix of the two. There were not any points that I was just like, please, will you end this dialogue, or please, will you stop throwing enemies at me? And that's how you know that the game, went through a lot to find that good mix. And I thought that was a great intermediary what they came up with. Like you had mentioned with the driving, that's not required at all. For the most part, if you want to explore these planets, you can. You're gonna find some more side quests along the way, but you know that's completely optional, and they're not requiring you to do that. And that's why I would give it such a high score, even with that in there, is because you don't have to do it. And just the story, it wasn't too long, it wasn't too short, so you can dedicate the time to it to finish the game in a reasonable amount of time. Some of these games that we get now, you could put hundreds of hours in it, and you don't even get close to the end of it. So this one got the right amount of content to put in it and the right amount of gameplay. So I would say overall 9 out of 10, and I'm excited to see what the other two have in store.
So my one little thing that I want to say, just kind of piggybacking on what John was going off of here. I don't, again, we've talked and talked about this stuff, so I don't want to beat it too hard here. But um, with the Mako gameplay, the exploration of these side planets, like John said, it is entirely optional. But the reason why it affects my score so much is because if you want the most cohesive and complete ending to not one game, not two games, but three games here, you have to do everything. And you can do that playthrough where you say, I'm not going to explore, backwater planet number 12. But the thing is, if on backwater planet number 12, there's some, seemingly minor character there, it could have bigger, repercussions later on. And most of these things are not going to affect whether or not, the game is just going to just end in a completely awful way for you or not. But it might end in a unsatisfying way for a side quest or a chain of side quests that have built up over three games. And so that's the only reason why, I mean, it ultimately, even if it is optional, it affects a large, large portion of the game. So I can't in good, faith be like, yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just going to ignore it here. But that said, this is maybe our best reviewed game, our highest praised game that we've played as
Most
Backlog
detailed
Crew.
review too, I would say.
It's probably
Yeah,
the game that I've enjoyed the most on this show.
that's
Honestly, yeah, honestly.
really exciting. That makes me very happy because I've said at the very beginning, this is like one of my favorite games ever, one of my favorite video game trilogies ever. Going forward, I have already started the second game. I'm like 5 hours in. I think Kurt actually just started it. And John, are you about to start the second game as well?
I can't tell you if I'm going to start it yet or not. I can tell you that I will play 2 and 3. I can't tell you when I'll start them.
Gotcha.
Somebody has to edit these videos.
Now, I'm not pushing anything because I appreciate what you're doing, but just wanted to gauge the excitement because I know that I am personally excited to kind of keep with this trend. Because, like I said, it's like a movie for me. I just want to keep going. And I know when I finish, I'm probably going to do another replay or two.
Yeah, I've started up the second one, but part of me is like, go back and do a Renegade run just to see what it's like. Just blast through the
Not yet,
story.
not
But I'm
yet.
like, no, I need to like actually make it through
Closure.
the trilogy before I go for seconds.
I can tell you
Um,
for sure. Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
oh, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I can tell you for sure I will not be doing a replay of any of the games anytime soon because I'm one that I'll remember a lot of this story, and I'm like, well, I don't want that to determine my decisions for these things. So I'm definitely
Mm.
not going to be doing a replay anytime soon. But I'm definitely excited to play 2 and 3 at my leisure.
No, completely understand. As far as this episode goes, I think we're pretty much at the end. Uh, if you made it through what would now be maybe 8 hours of total
Probably
videos
9.
between part one and two, thank you for watching. Like I said, we are collectively known as Press A to Talk. This has been Backlog Crew. Go play Mass Effect.
And if you want to get a head start on the next game we're going to be playing, we're all planning on doing Wario World next, which originally came out for the Nintendo GameCube. We're going to be playing the first 2 worlds for the first episode and the second 2 worlds for the last part. So yeah, look forward to that. And like Ryder was saying, if you don't mind me doing the outro, thank you guys so much for finding us here at Press A to Talk. Thank you for watching our Mass Effect Backlog crew discussions. And yeah, thanks for everything. Bye.